What is up YouTube? I'm Royal, I'm rank 1 Wild Rift, and welcome to my long anticipated tier list video for patch 7.2. So the way that this video will be done, every time there's a big patch like 7.0, 7.1, 7.2, is we go through every single champion and I kind of show you my logic on where I'm rating them based on what has happened in the meta. So we currently have one of the most interesting metas in Wild Rift because we had so many item changes that literally everything changed. So obviously champion strength still matters, right? If a champion just has low numbers, they will still be pretty weak. But there's a lot of champions that have been very underrepresented in the past, mostly because they just didn't have a good item build that can now really show up. We also have a lot of really OP items that I'm going to be kind of talking about, and that has obviously made a lot of champions really OP. So let's start off with the Baron lane, and our first Baron laner is Akali, which hasn't really necessarily been buffed or nerfed. I think she's overall like maybe slightly weaker than last patch, but in the Baron lane, because this is the Baron lane tier list to begin with, she doesn't really shine. She struggles against a lot of these bruiser matchups. However, she's not an awful pick. Akali is one of the strongest champions if you know how to play her, if you understand the matchup. You also do have the ability to rush armor boots against a lot of these harder matchups. The tenacity can help as well, especially if you're against a magic damage champion. However, I think in the Baron lane, she's just not as good. So I'm between A and B, to be 100% honest with you. I'm going to put her A because I understand that her skill ceiling is really good, really high, and I've seen a lot of really good Akali players pop off with her. What is Aatrox, by the way? Shouldn't he be here? Is this alphabetical? I guess we'll just go one by one. We'll get to Aatrox when we get to Aatrox. It's not alphabetical, even though it mostly is. Okay, the next Baron laner that we have here is Camille, who's going to go straight into S tier, one of the strongest champions in the game. Not much has changed in terms of her build. However, she can go Blade of the Ruined King now, which is one of the strongest items in the game. And you'll hear me talk quite a bit about Blade of the Ruined King. There's definitely an argument for Camille to be S+ as well, but I think S is the correct spot for her. No, again, not much has changed in Camille, so not much to talk about, but definitely a very strong champion. Next up, we have Darius, who's actually going to be going into B tier. I think Darius has been quite underwhelming for a while, especially against really good players. He struggles a lot against the meta Baron laners. It's hard to get a good matchup for him, especially now that like most tankier champions are weaker, and that's kind of where Darius shines. It just feels like there's never a good spot for Darius, and if he can't bully the lane, he again will struggle in the mid to late game, especially against a lot of the current mages are really OP, right? Against Lilia with Rallies, against Brand with Rallies, Darius just can't really play the game. So in terms of meta, he's actually looking quite weak right now. He does have new items, right? He has the Stride Breaker, but he was already getting that as an enchant. Now he's kind of forced to build Stride Breaker if he wants that slow. Then he doesn't get his Trinity Force. So overall, it's not a great situation for Darius to be in, despite kind of getting a new item. Next up, we have Dr. Mundo, who is also going to be going into the B tier. Mundo has been weak for very long, and the new items like none of them help him, and he also gets harmed by the Thornmail and the Sunfire Cape nerfs, right? Sunfire Cape was kind of situational, but Thornmail was always a must on Mundo, and especially because you're a Heartsteel stacking champion, the part of Thornmail that got nerfed was the damage from the HP scaling. So with Mundo you'd have like 5,000 health, but you're now just dealing like way less damage with Thornmail. So his build did get nerfed quite a bit, especially in terms of damage, and he was already kind of weak to begin with. Blade of the Ruined King being one of the strongest items has also caused a lot of decline for Mundo. I would put him into C tier, to be honest, but I think he's a good counter pick. I think he's fine to pick into like a Sion, to pick into like a Malphite. If the enemies do pick like a champion that they shouldn't have had, or they shouldn't have picked, you can kind of punish with Mundo. But again, he's going to be more of a situational pick for the time being on patch 7.2. Next up, we have Fiora, who's going to go straight into S tier. Fiora has been obviously good for a long time. Her AD ratios did get nerfed, but I think the current playstyle of Fiora is probably gonna be Blade of the Ruined King with Grasp. That combination is absolutely deadly. Grasp is obviously one of the runes that didn't get nerfed as bad as other runes because the damage actually got increased. It's the healing that kind of got nerfed. But Fiora already has great sustain, especially if you go Blade of the Ruined King, which now gives Omnivamp. Gives an insane amount of damage. You get a lot of AD from it, right, which is a really important stat for Fiora. And again, you're going to see this pretty constantly, that these Grasp Bruisers are going to be pretty high up in the Baron lane tier list, just because of how good Grasp and especially Blade of the Ruined King are this patch. Next up in the Baron lane, we have Garen, who's going to go into A tier. Garen has obviously not been necessarily nerfed or buffed this patch. However, he's just so good at being just a frontline tank, right? You tap your second ability, you can go like a variety of items on him. You can go a lot of tank items, you can go some more bruiser items. So he's always going to be a great Stonewall champion in a lot of matchups, especially against a lot of these bruisers, right? A silence on Fiora in the middle of a team fight is absolutely broken. So Garen will continue being A tier. I don't think like Garen, they need to really mess up Garen for him to fall below A tier just because of how good he's at stonewalling. Next up, we have Gragas, who's also going to go into B tier. He doesn't really benefit from any of the item changes. And the main issue with Gragas is that he's actually pretty weak in lane, in the Baron lane, as relative to the mid lane, where he's actually quite a bit better. I'm not sure if I'm going to even include him in the mid lane tier list because no one really plays him there. In the Baron lane, he can be good as an AP champ. I think on his tank bruiser build, he's quite a bit worse now. His AP build is okay, but you will struggle against a lot of these top tier bruisers. I'd recommend playing him in the jungle more than anything, but I don't think that this patch has been kind to him in the Baron lane specifically. He can't even really go Rod of Age anymore. That's worse on him too. Next up, we have Gwen, who is probably one of the supposedly strongest benefiters of the new patch. But honestly, I don't think I can put her in S+ tier. I think while she is very strong, and I do think that Dusk and Dawn has been a good item on her, I actually think that the Blade of the Ruined King champions have kind of overshadowed how good she should be in theory. And while I still think she's a really good champion, especially with the Dusk and Dawn, Nashor's Tooth, and Riftmaker build, I don't think I can warrant putting her into S+ tier, especially considering how strong all of the Blade of the Ruined King champions are relative to her, and a lot of them have really good matchups into Gwen. Especially, like, I think Jax has an okay matchup into her. I think Fiora does well into her. So I don't think I can rationalize putting her into the S+ tier. However, we're going to put her into the S tier. Next up, we have Aurelia, who again is going to go into the S tier. And that is mostly because of the Blade of the Ruined King being such a broken item. And Aurelia is probably the best user of it, right? Because it works on her first ability. So once you get, just getting your, well, even your ultimate, just your basic combo, you hit your third ability, you use your first ability on a minion, you auto attack third ability, you've already done like one of the parts, and then you first ability, auto attack first ability, and you've already procced Blade of the Ruined King like 5 times. The enemy health is already at like 40%, and then you're just running them down. And she also has really good AD scalings on her passive. So Aurelia is definitely one of the biggest benefactors of Blade of the Ruined King. Next up, we have Jax, who does have the Dusk and Dawn build as well, getting his ultimate passive damage a lot more frequently. Obviously, Jax was always pretty strong, but now he has Dusk and Dawn and Blade of the Ruined King. He can actually go both of them. I do think that Trinity Force might still be a little more reliable on him. The problem with Dusk and Dawn is that it leaves you very, very squishy. So I think Trinity Force might still be better on Jax. Obviously, it will depend on matchup. But if you go Trinity Force into Blade of the Ruined King, into something like a Hullbreaker, Jax is looking real good. And if you want to be greedy, you can go Dusk and Dawn, but then getting Blade of the Ruined King just leaves you super, super squishy and it kind of feels bad. But definitely with either of these builds, Jax is definitely in the S tier. Next up, we have Jace, who is also going to be joining Jax in the S tier. Jace has just been super strong for a very long time, especially now that he can actually rush tier. I don't know if that's optimal on him. I think might still better to go longsword and then probably like clips into Metamune, especially in the Baron lane. But Jace has been a very, very strong champion for a very long time, so he'll not much has changed for him, but he'll continue to be one of the best champions. Next up, I have Kayle, who I'm gonna put into the A tier. Kayle does suffer a lot still from the usual things that Kayle suffers from, especially in the Baron lane. Like, she's very matchup dependent. She will easily get crushed by most of the S tier champions in lane, right? So you need to pick her into a good matchup, and she will be able to survive the lane scale very nicely against a lot of these other A tier and B tier champions. But the current meta in the Baron lane is gonna be champions that will kill Kayle quite easily. So I can really justify putting her more than A tier. However, Dusk and Dawn is a great first item on Kayle, so she has kind of benefited a lot from this. What you can also do in the Baron lane especially is rush Blade of the Ruined King. Obviously, it's been slightly nerfed for ranged champions, but you can do Blade of the Ruined King into Dusk and Dawn and then into Nashor's Tooth or Rage Blade. So there are a lot of options, but she does have Dusk and Dawn now, which does help quite a bit, but I'd say she's probably a little better in the mid lane. Obviously in the Baron lane, it will depend on matchup. She can be really good there. Next up, we have Kennen, who's going to go into the B tier. Kennen is probably one of the main, I want to say, losers of the AP changes, right? He really liked Hextech Soulstealer. He really likes burst damage. Now he does have Storm Surge, which is okay, and especially if you rush it, will help you thanks to movement speed against a lot of these like Baron lane champions, right? These bruisers. But overall, I just don't think I can justify putting him any higher than this. Again, mostly because how weak he's gonna be in lane against like champions like Irelia, Fiora, Jace, Jax. So we'll just jump on him and kill him over and over again. However, if you are a good Kennen and you can find your angles in team fights, you can still have huge impact. Okay, next up we have Malphite, who's gonna go into A tier. Malphite's an elite counter pick against a lot of champions, right? But his Thornmail did get nerfed. Sunfire got nerfed, which is something you would occasionally build. So Malphite is just kind of in a rough spot in that sense, but he's still an elite counter pick. So if you're looking for a champion to play against Jace, against even Jax, I don't know how his Fiora matchup is now after the Thornmail nerfs. This shouldn't have him too bad because you don't really build a lot of armor on Malphite. But overall, I don't think I can justify putting him into S tier, but again, an elite counter pick. Next up, I have Nasus, who is actually going to go into B tier. Nasus is one of those champions that, like, if you can get a good early game on him and you do not play him, and especially if you're better than the enemy Baron laner, the game is just won, genuinely, right? You go Trinity Force, you go Sundered Sky, and you're just dealing a crazy amount of damage after easily stacking up your first ability. However, if the enemy Baron laner is better than you, or if he's playing a matchup that's very, like, not Nasus favored, like a Jace, right, then you are in trouble, right? So he's, again, a very situational champion. It depends a lot on the player's skill level too, but I don't think I can put him higher than B tier because top players just know how to punish him, especially in the Baron lane, where you're very vulnerable. What a lot of players do, especially in the China server, is take the Nasus in mid lane. I've seen that a lot in Legendary ranked in high elo in China. To kind of have like an easier time stacking your first ability, right? Obviously, you kind of lose a lot of mid lane priority, but if your team just plays safe, you scale like a monster, and it's really hard to punish you in the mid lane. But in the Baron lane, it's going to be super easy for you to get dove and so on. I'm not going to include Nautilus in the Baron lane, as I don't really think he's a Baron laner. I'm going to include Olaf. I think Olaf is relatively weak ever since his big nerfs. He doesn't really benefit much on the items. However, he can be a decent situational counter pick. Again, if the enemies pick something like Kennen, right? Even if they pick something like Gragas, you can just drop your ult and run these champions down. He can be okay. However, ever since his nerf, he's felt a little underwhelming in terms of his dueling power, which was supposed to be his main advantage in the Baron lane. I'm not going to include Pantheon in the Baron lane because no one really plays him there. Next, however, Renekton, who's going to go into A tier. Renekton is still a lane bully monster. However, he's definitely way more underwhelming than he was a couple seasons ago with his massive buffs. But ever since his nerfs, he's feeling a little underwhelming. Yes, the Blade of the Ruined King changes do help him a lot. It's now become like pretty much a core item on him, I would say. However, I don't think we can really rationalize putting him into S tier relative to the other champions that are there right now. But yeah, he's still a great pick, great lane bully, great snowballer. He also does benefit from the Thornmail nerfs as well. It's one of the main counters to Renekton. Bramblevest still fine, right? People will rush Valley against Renekton and maybe just not finish the Thornmail. But then eventually they will fail into the Thornmail, so the champions you're against will be dealing a little less damage. Obviously, this is a small indirect buff, but I think A tier seems about right for Renekton. Next up, I have Riven, who I think I'm also going to put into the A tier. Riven is a super high skilled champion. If you know how to play her, you can completely dominate. Her matchups are okay in the Baron lane, and she can definitely take over certain lanes if you play the matchup correctly. I do think she's just maybe slightly better in the jungle, where she can freely collect the resources. And again, she's kind of a situational pick. If you're playing against like a Renekton or a Garen or a Jace, you will really suffer. However, if you're in one of those skill matchups, like the Camille, the Fiora, the Irelia, and you know how to play them really well, you can do very well. So again, a very high skilled pick to make work. And I think A tier seems good for her. Next up, we have Sett, who I'm actually putting to B tier. I know a lot of people love Sett. I think he's one of the most well-loved champions. However, his kit is just so easy to play around for a lot of these Baron laners. I think he has benefited a bit from the removal of QSS and Stasis, or again, those becoming like actual items and not enchants. However, the main issue with Sett is how easily he gets kited. Thornmail got nerfed, which again was a decent item on him. I think right now the best build is to be somewhat of a damage dealing champion. So I think maybe Trinity Force would be the way to go on him. You can maybe go Heartsteel into Bloodmail, but I think that if you do go damage, you do have some potential. If you go tanky, there's better tanks to pick, and you just get kited out the entire time by a lot of these other champions, especially by a lot of these mages that are really good right now, which we'll talk about mostly on the mid lane tier list. Next up, we have Shen, and this is actually our first god tier. I've renamed to S+ to make it easier, more understandable. He's our first S+ champion. One of the most underrated champions for a while. I think the buffs he received a few patches ago were absolutely massive, and I think that he doesn't necessarily benefit from the item changes. That's probably a little nerf on him because Thornmail got nerfed. However, he benefits a lot from the grasp changes, right? I think the Heartsteel Shen build is really, really good right now. He can do Heartsteel into Titanic or Heartsteel into Sunfire, still fine. He just sticks on you with his third ability. His first ability does way too much damage. His second ability is a good counter to a lot of these auto attack based Blade of the Ruined King abusers. And of course, his ultimate is probably the best ability in the game. So we definitely have to put Shen into the S tier. He also synergizes with a lot of the champions right now. Tanks are not that good right now, but he is the tank that kind of works, right? So I think, especially if you're playing like duo queue or trio queue or even 5Q, that's where he really shines. But even in solo queue, he's one of the best champions right now, one of the most underrated champions for sure. Next up, we have Singed, who I've really debated putting in between S or A tier. I think I'm gonna put him into A tier, but if you're a really good Singed, you can definitely make him work in S tier as well. The main issue with Singed is how weak he is in the 1v1, right? He gets absolutely destroyed by pretty much every champion in the 1v1, but that's not why you pick Singed, right? You pick Singed to be annoying and to have insane pick potential. So if you can get to that mid game where you can make these roams, If you can get that team fighting where you're just slowing everyone with Liandry's and Rallies, obviously his early game is quite a bit better because you can just like rush Liandry's now, and it will do way more damage in the early game than before. So I do think there's definitely potential for Singed if you're really, really good, and he could potentially be an S tier champion. However, for the most part, I think A rating is and again, like my thing with the tier list is the criteria is obviously a little mixed. I'm not assuming everyone's a god on their champions, but I'm assuming that they have like at least basic knowledge on how to play them. And again, I have to kind of cover all elos as well. So champions like Singed can often be really hard to place. I try to make materials for like Master Plus at the bare minimum. It's not meant for super low elos. Otherwise, Shen will not be this high. And next up we have Sion, who's actually one of the biggest losers of the patch, and I'm gonna put him into B tier. I know that a lot of people might think that he's at least A tier still, but I think he's definitely one of the biggest losers of the patch, with both Sunfire Cape getting nerfed, Demolish got nerfed a little while ago, Overgrowth got nerfed, Thornmail got nerfed, too many Siren things have gotten nerfed, and again, Blade of the Ruined King champions just absolutely shred him. He's just completely countered by pretty much every S tier champion, so I don't think I can really put Sion any higher. He does have decent matchups against other champions, and you can use him as a situational counter pick to chill out the lane, but he's definitely one of the champions that suffered the most in this patch. Next up, we have Tryndamere, who's actually going to be our first C tier champion. Tryndamere is just ass, unfortunately. You can try like Blade of the Ruined King builds on him, but it's not great. Obviously, you'd prefer to go for crit. And he just gets hard countered by Randomness Omen that got buffed. Yes, Thornmail is a little weaker, which is kind of like an indirect buff, but unfortunately, Tryndamere just is not going to be cutting it. One of the weakest champions. If you're a god Tryndamere, you can make him work, but again, I can't rely on you being really, really good more than anything. Next up, I have Teemo, the young Timothy, and I've really debated between A and S tier for Teemo. The main problem with Teemo, even though I do think he benefited, is that he just gets crushed by so many matchups in the Baron lane that he feels really, really hard to play in a lot of matchups. And you kind of have to play safe. However, Teemo is definitely one of the champions that benefit the most. The new Liandry's Rush is really, really good on him. He still has the option of going Nashor's Tooth, but he can just go full AP burst as well. So I'm gonna put Teemo into the A tier for now, but a really good Teemo can definitely make him seem a lot better than that. Next up, we have Vayne, who I'm actually going to start including in my Baron lane tier list because it's just so good in the Baron lane, and I'm going to put her into the S tier. The Blade of the Ruined King changes might be a slight... I don't think it's even a nerf because of how much AD they actually added. Like, they gave Blade of the Ruined King 15... They gave 600 gold worth of stats on the item for nothing. For, like, a very slight nerf on ranged champions. I think Vayne is just one of the strongest lane bullies that also scales really well in the Baron lane. The main issue with Vayne top is the same issue that Teemo has. It kind of ruins your team comp. But if your team comp can compensate for it by having like a tank support and a bruiser in the jungle, Vayne can definitely be insanely powerful. So I'm going to put her in the S tier. She counters a lot of these Baron lane champions. Next up, I have Wukong, who's also going to be joining the S tier. Wukong benefits a lot from the Grasp changes, and overall, the other runes kind of getting nerfed because he loves Grasp. He's one of the best, like, annoying teamfight tanky champions, right? I recommend in the Baron lane playing him full tank. You don't have to go hardstyle, you can skip it. You can just go straight into that, like, magic resist Sunfire Cape and armor boots to get both magic resist and armor. And then you can just go, like... many different tank items on him. Thornmail is fine. You can go the thing that does damage around you every 4 seconds and heals you. You can go for Divine Sunder if you want more damage. Thornmail is still fine on him, right? He's just super annoying and really strong in lane with his first ability healing, and then he scales like a monster in team fights because of his ultimate knockup that he can actually do twice. Next up in the Baron lane, we have Yasuo, who's actually going to be joining us in the C tier. I think that Baron lane Yasuo is definitely hit the most. Yes, Blade of the Ruined King rush does kind of help. However, he's just so weak in the 1v1 against a lot of these champions. Maybe he's too cruel. I'm going to put him in B tier because a good Yasuo can still play safe, play smart, outscale, and he does have some okay matchups. However, he will get crushed against a lot of champions now because of his laning phase being a lot weaker. Like, how do you survive a Renekton lane on Yasuo? It's gonna be absolutely impossible. So we're gonna put him into B tier. However, we can't say the same for his brother Yone. That's actually gonna be going straight into S++ God tier. He's one of the best users of Blade of the Ruined King. He didn't have any other changes, no nerfs, no buffs, but he absolutely abuses the fuck out of Blade of the Ruined King. And he does have Gale Force as an option now. So he did kind of maybe get like a slight indirect buff, but it's mostly the Blade of the Ruined King changes that do help him out. I don't even think you'd really build a Gale Force. You'd probably go Blade of the Ruined King into Bloodthirster, into either Moral Reminder or the other crit armor pen item, and you're just dealing an insane amount of damage. You're a split pushing beast, and also Grasp of the Undying, right? That's another reason why Yone is really good. You're not going to be going Conqueror, you're not going to be going Lethal Tempo, you're going to be going Grasp of the Undying, because his first ability procs it, and he has higher range than most champions. Even if you're playing against another Grasp of the Undying champion, let's say like Camille or like I don't know, Sett, for example, you can keep spamming your first ability and getting those Grasp procs while they're not. You do have decent matchups into some of the S tier champions. Obviously, Yone is not that strong in lane, but you do scale immensely well. So I do think his Grasp Blade of the Ruined King build is going to be really, really good. And then you can go Bloodthirster, and then you can even go Divine. You could even go Divine Thunder second, but I've been liking going crit into damage, but you can go for a tankier build as well. That is completely fine. Just make sure you go Blade of the Ruined King and Grasp. Next up, we have Aatrox, who's going to be joining us in the S tier. This is a champion that I thought about putting into the S+. The new Gore Drinker, I think, is okay on him, but I still think Eclipse just offers more value in the early parts of lane. So I think you're still probably going Eclipse into either Sundered Sky, or I guess you can go Gore Drinker now. Key benefits, so not much has changed in him, but he was still good in the previous patch. I don't think he's good enough to put into S+, but we're definitely going to keep him in the S tier. Next up, I have Urgot, who I'm actually not quite sure about Urgot. I'll be 100% honest before you guys call me out for not being an Urgot expert. He's either A or B tier. He's an okay lane bully, but why would I pick Urgot when I can pick any of the S+ or S tier champions? He doesn't really provide much to the table because he's a lane bully, but he doesn't really bully the lane that hard, and then he just gets out-kited and outscaled if you're not able to get a lead with him. So I think he can work. He also doesn't really have like a great rune. I'm not actually sure what you would even, I guess, press the attack or empowerment, I think it's now called. I think that's probably your best bet with maybe like a Heartsteel build, but yeah, I'm not sure about Urgot, to be fully honest with you, so I'm going to place him in A tier. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on every single champion. Next up, I have Ornn, who's definitely going to be an S tier champion. Ornn is the absolute goat of tanks, right? Even though we do have Shen now in the S+ tier. Not much has changed with Ornn. He's maybe slightly nerfed from the items, but again, he's your premier engaged champion. If you want a weak side Baron lane, if you want to chill out, just, let's say you're against like a Jax or an Irelia or whatever you might be against, you just pick Ornn, you kind of AFK the lane, you still do a lot of damage, so you are a threat in the early game if the enemy Baron laner does mess up. But of course, you're going to be the most useful champion in the mid to late game with your insane engages, your insane tankiness, and of course your passive giving great tempo to a couple of your teammates. So it continues to be S tier, obviously. Next up, I have Volibear, who I'm going to put into... I debate between A tier and B tier, but I think I'm going to put him into A tier. I don't think that Dusk and Dawn is that great on him. A lot of people have been building like Dusk and Dawn Volibear. Maybe it's okay, like the AP build, where you go like Dusk and Dawn, Riftmaker type of items. Maybe you rush Heartsteel first and do that. Maybe you rush Trinity Force first and do that. I think like your best bet probably is Damage Volibear, and that's kind of what has made him good. Like if you go Dusk and Dawn, Riftmaker, then maybe like Hullbreaker, you just really play for the 1v1 side lane split push. I think that's probably your best bet. You can also just go like Heartsteel to start being tankier and also scale a lot better. So you can do like Heartsteel, Dusk and Dawn, Riftmaker. But I know that there's a lot of hype around it, but I don't think that it's the... I don't think it's worthy of S tier, S plus tier, or even like... I guess he's relatively the same as a lot of the other A tier champions in the same boat, so probably better than B tier. So we'll keep him in A tier. I think that's fair. But I think he might be a little overhyped. Swain, Vladimir, we're not going to include in the Baron lane. So next up, Maokai, I'm not going to include in the Baron lane anymore because I just haven't seen it all season. I don't think anyone plays this anymore in the Baron lane. I think he's pretty much only a support at this point. Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser, I think A tier. I thought that this champion will honestly be better with the changes, the item changes. I think he benefits a lot from Liandry's. He benefits a lot from Riftmaker. You can go Dusk and Dawn on him, right? That's not awful either. In the past, I've gone like Nashor's Tooth. I think Dusk and Dawn can be an okay item on him as well. You can go the new Magic Pen item, Bloodmail. You stacked up really quickly with your passive, right? Every single proc does it. So yeah, Riftmaker, Liandry's, all really good on him. I just don't... like, in-game, just doesn't feel good. I don't know what to say. Like, I think I've tried him. I've played against him a bit, and I've seen videos of him. And I've seen some streams of him, but he just looks kind of underwhelming considering how strong I thought he'd be. You can also go for Proto Belt. Proto Belt ult is pretty OP. But I just don't think he's an S tier champion, unfortunately. Next up, we have Ambessa, who is an S tier champion. Ambessa's trading is just so good in lane. Her trading is just way too broken, and she wins way too many matchups that you'd think would be kind of even. So she's definitely gonna be an S tier champion. It's not just her being really OP in lane, she also has the tools to really get into that backline and late game with her ultimate, and then she just does way too much damage from there. But it really is just her lane being way too strong. You do have Gore Drinker that you can take now. I don't think it's great. I think you still like just do Eclipse into like X item into Sherilda's. Overall, I think she's pretty good, and she also kind of benefits from Sundered Sky, not Sundered Sky. What's that item called? The Green Sword, man. Have it like on the tip of my tongue. The one that gives you ability haste for basic abilities. You guys know what I'm talking about. Someone will say in the comments. Someone sat through the entire video. W if you're sitting through the entire video, by the way. And you're not skipping to see the changes. Next up, we have Poppy, who I'm going to put into A tier. I think she's a good situational counterpick. She just feels a little underwhelming. The lane is supposed to be her strongest aspect. But if she... like, okay, you pick Poppy, I pick Camille, I just win the game. I pick Fiora, you counterpick with Poppy. Okay, you maybe slightly beat me in lane and then you're a tank, but then in the side lane you're getting demolished. Well, I think she's an okay situational counterpick. I think she, especially with Thornmail nerfs too, I just don't think she's good enough to be S tier. And that's the debate, right? She's definitely strong for A tier. But I just don't think she has what it takes to be S tier. I think even in her good matchups, she can be underwhelming. Yes, she abuses Grasp quite well with her passive. But maybe I'm wrong in this one, but I don't think that Poppy's worth S tier. Next up, we have Rumble, who is comfortably in S tier. He benefits a lot from the item changes. Liandry's rush on him is deadly. You can do tankier builds with Riftmaker as well. He just benefits so much from all the item changes, and he was already a fairly good champ. So yeah, definitely S tier. You're definitely not just building him full AP though. You're going for... you need to be going for the tankier build with Grasp of the Undying. So your goal is not to like maximize burst damage, you're maximizing damage over time and tankiness. So definitely go Grasp. Next up I have Gnar, who is also going to be joining us in the S tier. He did receive a little buff a couple patches ago, but Gnar has been very good for a very long time. If you know how to play Gnar, he's just a great blind pick. He's great in and out of lane. Mega Gnar is obviously one of the best teamfight champions in the game. Mini Gnar is one of the best kiter split pusher champions in the game. I think there is potential to play Gnar a little more aggressively as well. I'm not sure if Blade of the Ruined King is an angle on him, but your typical Trinity Force build is going to work out great. If you've seen, by the way, looking down, I have like notes on my second monitor on my phone for every champion, because I sat there and like researched every champion, went through like video streams of them and so on. Played them in practice, still play them in game. Just because I'm going through every single champion right now, right? So it's hard to keep track of all the information. And I think that, oh no, we still have K'Sante. I guess I have Skarner too, but I'm not going to include Skarner. K'Sante is going to be in A tier still. Or not still, I think he's been demoted from S tier. He did get nerfed quite hard. The Thornmail nerf hurts him, but he's still K'Sante. He's still going to be insanely broken early game, mid game, late game, CC, tank, assassin, bruiser, win condition, strong side, weak side, everything champion. Mobile, like what else do you need? The champion's kit is just so OP. Unless he gets nerfed in the ground, he'll at least always be A tier. And this is not a great patch for him, but I think he continues to at the bare minimum be an A tier champ. And I think that covers all the Baron Lane champions. I'm just going to do a quick sweep to make sure that I did not miss anyone, and then people will yell at me. Obviously, there's some champions that you can hypothetically go Baron Lane, but I'm just not going to include those because no one really plays them, and I mostly base my tier list off play rate. Like, if I haven't seen a champion all season long, like Warwick, no one plays Warwick Baron Lane anymore, I'm just not going to include him. I'm sorry. Quick sweep. Ryze Baron Lane is actually really strong, but no one plays it, so I'm not going to include it either. Ryze mid lane is really strong, so we'll get to that when we get to that. Skarner, I think, is more of a jungler. Alright, okay, and that looks good. So this is my tier list for patch 7.2 in the Baron lane. Let's give it a quick save so I can have it for next time. Perfect. And Amumu is one of the strongest junglers right now because you can actually build Liandry's first item or second item. You can go for Searing Crown first. I think Liandry is actually really, really good because it also increases your damage on your second ability, right? You're obviously constantly burning them. You're way too tanky to take down. I actually really like the Amumu Liandry's build. I think he's still fine without it too. But he also, a lot of these like mages that are in meta synergize very well with Amumu, right? Like these champions that like weren't great before, like Brand is being played a lot of mages in general synergize very well with him. But I think Searing Crown, Liandry's, or even Liandry Searing Crown on him is just such a powerful 1-2 combo. You do way too much damage. Your team fighting is insane. So definitely I think S tier deserved for the young Mumu. Also, I think that the rune that got nerfed the least, despite, or not the least, but the rune that wasn't nerfed as bad was the Ice Overlord rune. So a lot of champions that build Ice Overlord are fairly happy. Next up in the jungle, Brand Jungle perhaps. It is viable now. Is Camille still considered a jungler, chat? We'll put Camille in. She's between A tier, B tier. I don't really see her play a lot. I think when I do see her, she's an A tier champion, but she's just not really played often. Her jungle career is really weak, but she's so good at snowballing because of how insane her ganks with her ultimate are. Like, she probably has the strongest level 5 gank in the game. I would say even better than Vi. Like, your ultimate is just so broken for these types of ganks. And you can, like, snowball off control quite quickly. Gwen, I'm not going to include in my jungle tier list. I haven't seen Gwen jungle in so long, even though I do think it's okay. She's probably like another A tier champion, but I'm not going to put her in. I'll actually skip through a few champions. Echo. Echo is going straight to B tier. Dusk and Dawn is in theory good on him because you get 2 stacks of your passive. But Echo never had an issue proccing his passive, right? You have Fleet Foot where you just E, Q, auto attack. right? And you'd always park your passive. Now you can just EQ, you don't need the auto attack, but it was so easy to auto attack with the buffed fleet footwork. So I don't think that Dusk and Dawn is actually as big of an upgrade as people might seem. I would even go as far as to say that Lich Bane might actually still be better on him. But I do overall think that he doesn't really benefit from the items. He can no longer get Proto Belt as an enchant. He has to buy a whole item for the Proto Belt, which makes him not be able to go his bursty build. His damage feels a little underwhelming this patch. He also has really high AP scalings, and now he gets less AP scalings in the late game because of the death cap nerfs. So your best build is your best chance is probably to go like in the jungle like a Dusk and Dawn Nashor's Tooth build. So Dusk and Dawn can proc Nashor's Tooth. And you can clear your jungle quite quickly with that. The problem with Echoes compared to PC as well is that in Wild Rift, Echo's second ability, I'd like low-key turn my AC on. Hopefully it's not too loud on the recording. His second ability passive, which does like missing health damage and auto attacks, the ratios are really low in Wild Rift compared to PC. So he doesn't really benefit that much from Dusk and Dawn either. So anyway, we're gonna put him in the B tier. Next up, I have Evelynn, who is comfortably in the S tier. Evelynn has been OP for a very, very long time. She doesn't necessarily benefit from the AP item changes, but Evelynn is just really OP because of how much damage her first ability does, how quick her clear is, and she can completely take over games. I don't know what the best build on her is right now. You're probably going like Lich Bane into Death Cap, into Storm Surge, or into Infinity Orb, and then maybe at the end you're getting like a Void Staff, something like that, if the enemies have a lot of magic damage or magic resist. I think the patch was overall maybe slightly negative for her, but I still consider one of the best champions in the jungle. Next up, we have Gragas, who I'm going to put into A tier. I think in terms of AP burst assassins, he's still good. I just don't think that AP burst assassins in the jungle, other than like Evelynn, are great. If you know how to play Gragas, you can still pop off on him, but I do think he's been slightly, or more than slightly, nerfed this patch. You're probably just going full burst on him, maybe with phase rush, and you're still making it work, as we've seen some players do on my stream, but I do think he's a little weaker, and he did receive a nerfs a few patches ago too, on the last season, which didn't help. And next about Fizz, who we're not gonna sugarcoat it. He's in C tier. He obviously doesn't benefit from Dusk and Dawn anywhere near as much as other champions, because he is a burst champion, right? He's not an auto attack based champion. However, in the jungle, his best build might generally just be Dusk and Dawn into Nashor's Tooth. So I don't really know. Maybe it's still like just Lich Bane, Death Cap to make it work. But he's just so weak. So definitely a C tier champion. Which sucks because I love Fizz. I hope they buff him. Right, please buff Fizz. Graves is going to go into the A tier. I think he's a good champion. I think he can completely take over games if you play him well. And depends, again, he's a very situational pick. He will struggle against a lot of these current mages in the meta. He just struggles in general against high range champions, especially ones that can CC him. But against a lot of like bruiser champions where he can get his third ability stacks, he can pop off. I'm putting him into A tier, but I do think there's potential for him to be S tier. Like I definitely think he's stronger than Gragas if it really came down to it. But obviously Gragas counters Graves, so don't pick Graves into Gragas. Next up, I have Jarvan, comfortable is S tier. He's been so good for so long. He just has such good early game ganks and skirmishing, while still having a lot of impact with his ultimate in the late game. You can no longer cheese him with Hex Flash as well. Hex Flash only works outside of combat. What a lot of good players would do against Jarvan is just go Hex Flash. He would ult you and you would just Hex Flash out of his ult, right? And that made it so frustrating for him to play. So that no longer exists. So that's actually like a big buff to good Jarvan players against good players that knew about the trick. I've shown off many times on my stream too. But definitely an S tier champion in the jungle. Jax is going to go straight into C tier. I think with Dusk and Dawn, his jungle clear speed actually gets a little better. So if you like go Dusk and Dawn into like a normal Jax build, I do think that maybe it's playable. Maybe I should put him into B tier for that, to be honest. Maybe it's like actually more playable, because it's more playable than it's been in the past, but it's still not great, if that makes sense. In fact, we'll put him into B tier. So you're going into like kind of like an AP bruiser build with Jax in the jungle. You go Dusk and Dawn, and then you kind of build like you can build like Stasis, you can build Rift Maker, like these types of items, I think. And that makes him kind of playable. More playable than he's been in the past in the jungle. The problem again is his passive doesn't work on jungle camp, so his clear is really, really slow. That's the main problem with Jax in the jungle. In the jungle. Jay's actually a good jungler, but no one plays him. I'm just gonna put him into A tier. A lot of people don't talk about Jay's jungle, but he's actually pretty good. He farms well. He like does way too much damage. I think he's a decent champion. I'm gonna put him in A tier even though no one plays him. Maybe my tier list will encourage people to play Jay's jungle more. But I guess maybe I shouldn't do that because I didn't put like Ryze Baron lane. That's really good as well. Fuck it, I'm gonna be biased. I'm gonna put him in. Next up, I'm not gonna put Kayle in the jungle. We're gonna take Kha'Zix, who I think is probably like a little overrated. I think that he's okay. There's just better picks. I think there's stronger assassins than him even. I guess Kayn is quite a stronger assassin. I just don't think he's that great. I think he kind of struggles in the early game a lot. And as an assassin, you want to snowball for the most part. And it's not like his late game is so crazy good, or his mid late game is so crazy good that it makes up for his early game. I think he can get bullied quite a lot. So I don't think I can put him higher than A tier. Next up, I have Lee Sin, who I've really debated between S+ and S tier. He did get, in theory, like, nerfed, right? But it really doesn't feel like nerfs. It's mostly his third ability that does no damage, but his first ability, ulti first ability, is still good. He has way too much utility. The champion can completely take over games. I don't think he's worthy of S+, but he's still a really, really good jungler. I don't think that the nerfs or changes to make him into a bruiser even really worked. You can still go assassin build and he will do a lot of damage. Next up, we have Morgana. We're going to put into A tier. I think she's like actually a decent jungler now with the item changes. You can go for Blackfire Torch and you clear the jungle quite quickly. Liandry's and you clear the jungle quite quickly. I think both work really well. She now has an even faster jungle clear once you even get Faded Ashes, which builds into both of these items, which is really, really broken for AP junglers. So we're just going to put it into A tier. Who is next? To make sure I'm not missing anyone. Master Yi is again gonna go straight into A tier. Master Yi is a really underrated champion. I think he's actually one of the highest skilled champions in the game. He can use his second ability and his first ability to dodge a lot of damage. You can be super useful. The Blade of the Ruined King changes have really helped him as well. You can now go Blade into Rage Blade and Kraken maybe. Like before, you sometimes get Kraken, sometimes get Blade as a first item. I think he's an absolute goated champ if you can play him well. However, I don't necessarily think he deserves S tier after all the nerfs he's had. Can't balance him out. But if you're a good Master Yi, definitely still a really good champion. Next up, we have... Is Nautilus even jungler anymore? Like, is he? He like completely removed his jungle damage. I'm not gonna consider Nautilus a jungler. I'm sorry. Like his clear speed which is what made him OP, doesn't exist anymore. So he's so like weak in the jungle now. Nasus, no, that's not League of Legends. Nunu, this is a champion that I'm really conflicted between S+ tier or S tier. He did get nerfed, which kind of sucks, and I think has kind of pushed him a little lower down the tier list. Even though I do think he's one of the strongest champions in the game, I don't think in good conscience I can put him in S+ tier. I think I'm going to have to fight my own bias and just put him into S tier. Still a really good champion. One of the best tanks in the game, but I don't think I can put him higher than S tier. Next up, I have Pantheon, who again I've thought between A tier and S tier. I do think that Pantheon deserves to be S tier though. I think he's kind of an underrated champion. I think his ganking is super, super powerful. I think he does an insane amount of damage, and he's one of the biggest benefactors, I guess. Like, am I using benefactors correct? Does that mean somebody who benefits from? I think so. I'm gonna keep using it this way. And if it's wrong, I'm gonna still keep using it. He benefits a lot from the Blade of the Ruined King changes, right? Because he loves AD. He has good AD scalings, but he loved Blade of the Ruined King for the passive. So I'm gonna put Pantheon into the S tier. And if it's wrong, I don't care, sue me. Next up, we have Olaf, who I'm gonna put into the A tier. He can be situationally good, especially if I have the right team come for him. Obviously, I think Olaf really needs an enchanter to make him like work well. But I think in a lot of matchups, he can be really good. He can run champions down. He can be completely overwhelming. Again, very similar to Master Yi, but for different team comps. Olaf is a lot better against high CC. Master Yi is a lot better against low CC. But if you do just run your Trinity Force, you can really run people down with an enchanter besides you, especially. Especially considering all these immobile mages becoming meta, right? Like, you can just run down Ryze, Brand, Zyra, you just ult in and you just run them the fuck down. Next up I have Rammus, who is S tier. Rammus, he's a situational pick, but against like, okay, the enemy picked Master Yi, you pick Rammus, you get free win. The enemy picked Yone or Yasuo, you pick Rammus, you get free win. The enemy picked X champion, you pick Rammus, you get free win. He's such a good free win champion versus a lot of team comps. So I'm gonna put him in S tier. But again, if you're playing Rammus into like a Brand or a Lilia, you will suffer a lot. So I don't think I can put him higher than that. Next up, we have Rengar. Rengar the GOAT, by the way. Rengar is one of those champions that if you're really good on him, you can really pop off. But if you're bad on him, he looks awful. I'm going to put him in A tier. I have in the past put him in S tier for the most part, but I think that he kind of struggles with the Essence Reaver nerfs. He's just going to be doing less damage on his burst because he was an Essence Reaver champion for the most part. You got like crit into damage. So I don't think I can rationalize putting him any higher after he gets nerfed, and he was already barely S tier. But if you're a goated Rengar, the champion is insane. It's kind of my take. Shen is going to go into S tier. Very similar reasons why he's S plus in the Baron lane. However, I do think he's better in the Baron lane because of how good his trading is. However, he's a decent in the jungle as well. Mostly because his ulti is just a perfect counter gank tool. His clear is still not very, still not slow. It's a decent clear. He does fall off a bit late game compared to most junglers, but still one of the strongest champions in the game. And since he can jungle, he's S tier in the jungle. Riven is going to go into A tier. I think she's honestly, like, I've thought about putting her into S tier. I know that a lot of people hype up Riven, but in my opinion, she's just not that good of a jungler anymore. Her clear speed is not great. And while she is good in these like skirmishes and ganks, and she can snowball really hard, right? Once you get your ulti, you get your ulti reset. And from there you can pop off. Maybe I'm being too harsh on Riven, but she's just, I mean, every time I see her, she's just underwhelming. Only KKM can play this champion, I swear. He's the only one that makes her look good. But even then, I think he's like handicapping himself with Riven more than anything. When he could be playing better champions. Shyvana is gonna go into, I think, A tier, right? Shyvana had a lot of changes recently. I don't really remember them. I've seen her in a couple of my games, and I think I did go and watch like one video of her. So this might be wrong information, right? I'm not saying that this maybe I'm misjudging her. Maybe she is S tier. Because Blade of the Ruined King does feel good on her. So you go like Trinity Force, Blade of the Ruined King, and do a lot of damage. But I don't think she's as good as the S tier junglers. I think she takes too long to get going, and even when she does, she's again similar to Olaf and Master Yi. Like, yeah, she can take over the game, but she just doesn't provide as much as other champions, in my opinion. Especially not in the early game where she's just doing nothing. And given Master Yi is a lot better in the early game. Next up in the jungle. There's so many champions I can go jungle, so I need to be very careful. Tryndamere we'll put into C tier for obvious reasons. Don't pick jungle Tryndamere. Don't pick Tryndamere at all, to be honest. Next up, Violet. So this is a very interesting champion. I think she's S tier. I think her ganks are just still way too good. Her clear is good. She can actually go Blade of the Ruined King. I don't think it's the perfect build on her, but she can do it against a lot of tanky champions. It works well with her passive, which gives her like attack speed and like the armor pun. But you're mostly just going Trinity Force anyway. Obviously, we already know why this champion is over here. Her ganks are broken. I don't need to explain too much for Vi. She just maintains S tier positioning. Next up, we have Wukong, who probably still S tier, right? His team fights are really good. His early game ganks are really good. He does a lot of damage. My main problem with Wukong is that why would I pick Wukong when I can pick like Vi or Jarvan or these types of champions, right? In the jungle, you're mostly building in Bruiser, so he doesn't really benefit from his tank build either. Like, he's good. He's probably still S tier, but no, I'm gonna put him A tier. I'm sorry. I think the S tier champions are just better than him. I think, but he's in between. He's actually a good jungler if you know how to play him, and you can pick him in the right team comp. Like if you need like team fight CC, if you want to shut down a lot of these like assassin champions that hate your knockup. But I think I'm not gonna be able to put him in S tier in good conscience. Next up, I have Xin Zhao, who I think I can put into S tier. I think Xin Zhao is kind of an underrated champion. He's fairly easy to play. He does a shit ton of damage in the early game, and you can really snowball games hard with him. Yes, he falls off in the late game, but if you know how to utilize his ulti, you can become surprisingly tanky while still dealing a lot of damage. The main issue with Xin Zhao is if you fall behind, it feels real bad. Falling behind on Xin Zhao is like torture, by the way. For the rest of the game, you're being tortured because you're gonna be 0% useful. Yeah, so it's not a jungler. Zed. It really pains me to do this, but Zed has been nerfed pretty hard. The stasis changes are actually a huge nerf. I think I've talked about this on my stream a lot. That was not a buff, that was a nerf. Oh, but ADCs can't go stasis. Yes, they can, by the way. Yes, they can. You can spend 1,400 gold and you still get armor and the stasis active on the like component item. Seeker's Arm Guard. And especially if you're an ADC that utilizes magic damage, you can still do it. Like ADCs before wouldn't want to go stasis because you're wasting 1,000 gold, right? Now you're gonna waste 1,400 gold and get a bit of armor, but it's kind of the same concept. And now a lot of mages can get early game stasis. Like, you can't gank mid lane anymore because if they see Zed, they go early game Seekers, and your ulti now has a huge cooldown either, so it's not like you can ult him and then get another ulti. So huge nerfs for Zed, and especially his ultimate nerf feels pretty bad for really, really good Zed players, which is where he shined. So it pains me to do this, but he's not an S tier champion anymore. He's going to be going into the A tier, unfortunately. I'm not going to put Yone in the jungle. I don't think he's just so weak in jungle compared to mid and top. Warwick is actually a champion that I think is definitely S tier. I think he's so disgusting right now with Blade of the Ruined King. Like he just one-shots you. I had one game where like he was so far behind and he had Kraken and Blade of the Ruined King. He just ulted me and literally one-shot me. Like it felt like a release Warwick rework. Super insane champion. One of the best champions at utilizing Blade of the Ruined King thanks to his ultimate, right? And again, the Blade of the Ring is just so OP now because it gives like pretty much an extra 15 AD for nothing on melee champions. That is so insane. So a lot of the meta is kind of revolving around that. I do expect to be nerfed. But yeah. If you're not Blade of the Ring King nerfs, all the champions that use it probably gonna get nerfed. Where were we? Kayn, S tier. Kayn is an absolutely goated champion. He feels so good to use after his buffs on his ultimate, where he can go in, where he goes out and he can use his abilities quicker. That feels so good, by the way, especially for blue Kayn, because you get your one shot quite quicker. I do think red Kayn is still probably the better form, but obviously it depends on matchups. I think at this point you can probably just blind pick Kayn. You can literally blind pick Kayn and then go blue or red depending on the enemy team comp. because I think both forms are really, really broken. They did buff the Blue Kayn form a little bit too. I think it might be the best assassin in the game, in the jungle, Blue Kayn. Well, pure assassin, like. Actually, does Nidalee count as an assassin? If Nidalee counts as an assassin, Nidalee's better. But both Blue and Red Kayn are really, really good. And you can just blind pick him and just go, which, like, the enemies are like, oh, they picked Kayn. Maybe we should go full melee or full range. And there's just nothing you can do. The champion is just so, so good now. And he has both his forms being so broken really helps. Very good changes. Very nice quality of life changes that make him feel so much smoother. I'm surprised how much better he feels just from that small change in his ult. Now, Aatrox, we're going to put into S tier. Again, this champion, very similar to the Baron lane. Not much has changed for him. He just continues to dominate. His resets are broken. He's a great bruiser, great early game skirmisher. Definitely still an S tier champion, but again, not much to say. Not much has changed for him. It's another day being Aatrox. Volibear, I'm going to put into A tier. I actually do think that in the jungle, he might have more potential than the Baron lane because he can get really fed really fast. Get all of his, like... broken items, right? Like Dusk and Dawn. She can collect Heartsteel stacks from everywhere in the jungle too. It might be a little easier on Baron lane, I'm not sure. And his clear doesn't really suffer from it if he rushes Heartsteel in the jungle. Maybe you go like Dusk and Dawn rush into something. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think he's... I think for like hard carrying, it's a little better in the jungle, but I don't know overall if it's better. But still a decent jungler, I guess. I'm gonna put him into A tier. You can put him into B tier if you'd like. Both A tier and B tier are probably fine for him. I'm gonna put him into A tier. Because he can get so fat in hard carry games. Well, obviously he has other issues in the jungle, like how awful his ganks are. Lilia is going into the S tier. This is a champion that I thought would be God tier, but I think she's probably better than most of the S tier champions. I think the main issue with Lilia is I underestimated how broken Rabadon's death cap is on Lilia. I definitely underestimated how broken Rabadon's death cap is on Lilia and how broken her AP scalings were. She synergizes really good with the new items, but I think her Rod of Ages into Psychic Projector into death cap build, or Rod of Ages death cap Psychic Projector build might have actually been better because of how much AP she got and how tanky she was. However, she's still really, really good with the Liandry's build. Don't build Rod of Ages anymore on her, obviously. You're just going to go for Blackfire, Liandry's combo. You can go Rylai's on her now too, which is really good against a lot of champions. So, still really good. It still benefits a lot from the other items. I just underestimated how broken she was with the previous items, I think. So, still an S tier champion for sure. But I did expect her to be S+ tier when I saw the changes, I'll be honest. I was on the Lilia hype train. Hecarim, also an amazing S tier champion, one of the strongest junglers in the game. He, even despite receiving nerfs, I think that despite receiving nerfs in the past patches, I think Hecarim is just so overwhelming. He clears so fast and does so much damage in fights. His early game has been a bit weaker, but you can just farm it out, and your ultimate is just so broken in team fights. You just hard carry every fight. For sure, an S tier champion. But yeah, not much has changed for him. Nilah, she's gonna go. Really good. The Nilah players make Nilah look really good, and if you do like not punish her, she can get out of control. So I'm gonna put her into A tier. I'm not sure if I'm biased because I'm seeing really good Nilah players play her against bad players. Right, like I'm seeing Corrupt play Nilah and he's just stomping NA Diamonds and NA like Grandmaster and Challenger peakers. But so maybe I am biased and maybe she should be B tier. But I'm gonna put her in A tier for now. And I think that's fair. Zyra and can jungle without the bug. she's viable, I guess, but obviously not great. Talon, I've thought a lot about Talon and if he should be in S tier or A tier, but I actually don't think I can rationalize putting him to S tier. I think there's better assassin junglers, so I'm gonna put him into A tier. I think Kayn just has very similar high tempo as him, but does a better job, and you can also go red Kayn, but blue Kayn is just better than Talon. He just feels a little underwhelming right now. Maybe I have put him A tier in the past, and I've changed my mind and put him back into S tier. And again, he hasn't received changes for a while. But I think I'm gonna put him into the A tier. Next up, we've got Kindred, who is gonna go into S tier. I think Kindred is one of the most like underrated champions. I think a lot of people would rate him lower. I would say that they don't know how to play him, or her, or it, or they. I guess they, them, right? It's like two people or two beings, kind of. It's like the lamb and the wolf. But Kindred, I think, is actually really good. I think you have a lot of choices on his build as well. I'm not sure how he does with the newest item, Gale Force. I do know that he likes Essence Reaver, and that's been nerfed, which really sucks. But I think he continues to be, or they continue to be, a really, really strong champion. So definitely S tier. Next up, we have... Is Maokai jungle still alive? Next up, we have Viego, who is in a weird case because he's a good kind. I mean, he should in theory be the best Blade of the Ruined King champion, but you don't really like Blade of the Ruined King on Viego. You actually prefer to go for Essence Reaver and go burst Viego, right? And the problem is that, like, despite Blade of the Ruined King being a good item on him, he doesn't really utilize it very well. And his burst build has been nerfed with Essence Reaver. So he's in the same boat as Rengar, like his one-shot potential is just lower because he abused Essence Reaver, who has now been nerfed. So I think he's an A tier champion after all the nerfs he's received. Still good, right? You can still really take over games with Viego, but I think the S tier champions are just better. But it's really funny that like Blade of the Ruined King's OP and the Ruined King is not maybe I'm just stupid. He's not good. Maokai, I don't think is like, he's good in the jungle, but no one plays him, so I don't think I'm gonna rate him. He's like okay. He's probably like an A tier. No one really plays Mordekaiser jungle, which I actually think might be slightly better now because of Dusk and Dawn. Maybe do like a Dusk and... I haven't tried this, I'm just predicting. Like a Dusk and Dawn build, Mordekaiser build. That could be funny. Ambessa, still S tier in the jungle, I think. She clears the jungle fairly fast, and her skirmishing is really OP. She's definitely not as strong as she's been in the past, but I feel like she's too strong to not put into S tier, if that makes sense. I feel like her dueling and her early skirmishing is just way too good to not put into S tier. Rumble in the jungle, perhaps? No one plays that, unfortunately. Nor in the jungle, perhaps? No one plays that either. We're gonna put Poppy into A tier. I think she's fairly okay. Her early game is good. She has her win conditions. She just gets really hard outscaled by pretty much every champion in the game. So we'll put her there. I feel like I've missed champions. Oh, I've missed Darius. Let's put Darius in B tier. Again, similar issues with jungle. Similar issues with Baron lane. In the jungle, it's maybe a little better, but he just gets like outshined by the field. In the jungle, he can maybe just clear a little quicker, or he clears a little quicker than a lot of champions. But he just has absolutely awful ganks and really depends on the team comps. But a lot of people consider him a jungler, so I'm going to put him in the jungle as well, because his passive does low-key destroy camps. Yeah, I'm not going to put Rumble in the jungle. Nocturne, this is a champion that I've really thought about putting between S tier or A tier, but I think he's an A tier champion. I think his ultimate can be overwhelming for a lot of like bad players, but I feel like good players just really know how to deal with Nocturne ulti, so it's not that big of a deal. So I think it might just be early season bias that he looks so good. Next up, I have Nidalee, who will be the first S+ tier champion. So what's crazy about Nidalee is she has so many good items on her right now and so many good builds. And Champion was already really OP, right? And Champion was really OP. In the past, she was always like S tier or God tier in my tier lists. The thing with Nidalee now, because she has like an AP scaling for armor and magic resist, like her super late game is worse, yes, but her early to mid game is a lot better with these items. And that was the part that Nidalee wants to be better, if that makes sense. Like Lilia, for example, doesn't care about her early game being bad. She can just ignore that. She farms up, she gets to her power spikes, and eventually becomes good. Nidalee is a snowball champion. Nidalee loves being ahead, and she will really bully you if she's ahead, right? Because of the crazy amount of mobility she has. So the item changes that made AP champions better in the early to mid game and weaker in the late game have really benefited Nidalee, I think, because she can get those early leads. All her items are like a little better in the early game. Yeah, she doesn't get as much AP with Deathcap. Well, I actually saw KKM do. I was watching his stream. He built a Trinity Force first on Nidalee, which is crazy, and it looked like it was doing a lot of damage. I've seen that before, but now because the problem is before you really want to do AP items to get the magic penetration, right, and eventually get enough AP that Deathcap's 45% AP ratio gives you like a massive boost. But now you can even go Trinity Force, and then eventually you get like Void Staff for the Magic Pen, right? You don't need the items. Obviously, Lich Bane's still good. You can get an early... You can still go Lich Bane Deathcap for like an early power spike. But Trinity Force Loki looked crazy good when he played it. But maybe he's just a god, so... he may look better than it is. But I do think Nidalee's definitely an S+ tier champion, especially if you're a good jungler. This is definitely the champion to be going. The more standard build, if you're not under Trinity, would be just like Lich Bane, Infinity Orb, or Lich Bane Deathcap. It's just a way more powerful 2-item power spike than you were getting before. However, her I'm gonna say at 3 items, if everything's even, she's a little weaker, and at 4 items, she's weaker than before. But because those 1 and 2 items are so much stronger, she's able to find those leads for herself in the jungle, get way ahead of other junglers, and then you bully them so hard that you end up with, like, on average, I'm gonna say like 200 to 500 gold more than you did before. So overall, it works out on Nidalee's favor. So definitely one of the champions that benefited the most in like a very indirect sense in the jungle. This can be all the junglers, right? Okay, we have Taliyah, we have Skarner. Taliyah's still an S tier jungler, I think. She does have her issues. Obviously, she was nerfed quite a lot. Maybe she's not an S tier. Maybe she's an A tier champion. I'm not sure. But she does really good clear. She's really good counter to a lot of junglers. Like, how do you play Graves into Taliyah, right? Literally impossible. Like, I can't imagine a worse torture. You can't dash forward to get to her, and she outranges you. Because if you dash forward, you die to her third ability. So that's really funny. But again, really good counter to a lot of champions. And still an elite jungler despite all of the nerfs. Okay, Skarner. Skarner probably B tier. Despite his buffs, he continues to be very, very weak. He just needs more buffs, to be honest. His damage is too low, his clear is too slow. Even though he's great in the late game, especially with his ultimate, he just never gets there while being even or ahead. That's the main issue. So we're gonna put him into the B tier. Let's see, I feel like I've missed some, so let me just go through it quickly. Okay, none of these in the first row. None of, I guess Gwen technically, but I guess Mundo. Here, let's drop Mundo into the C tier. Just for the lols of it, because I've been seeing a lot of people play him. You know, I'm just gonna, I already said she's A tier, so I'll just put her in. Put the Gwen in. I already spoiled it, might as well include her. I guess that is it for junglers, right? None of these champions. Oh, I almost forgot Fiddlesticks. Not the big sticks. Fiddlesticks actually like an okay champion. I think he probably loses a bit from the items, right? He really liked his Hexic Soul Stealer, and that's gone now. I'm not even sure what you would build on Fiddlesticks now. Probably like... And he really liked high AP scaling, so I think he's actually a loser in terms of the AP items. I'm not sure what you would build now. Stasis, again, he was very reliant on Stasis, and I have to buy a whole item for it. But then he wants to buy the damage items instead. So it's a bit of a mess. Do you go Malignance on him? I don't actually know what you would build on him. But I do think he's weaker. You're probably just going to go like Malignance, Infinity Orb, Stasis, Deathcap, Void Staff, something like that. But he's definitely been hit by the patch, not benefited. I can't believe I almost missed the big sticks. Didn't talk about him. It's crazy not to put Mog. You know, I'm gonna put Mog. No, just leave him out. Don't place him. Okay, and that looks good. If I've missed any champions, I'm so sorry. Comment down below and I'll tell you my thoughts on him on a comment. But this will be the jungle tier list for patch 7.2. Mid lane, Ahri, S tier. So Ahri, I think you can make an argument for her to be God tier, to be honest. I don't think she's necessarily benefited or lost out on the items, but I think other champions have benefited a lot and they've kind of surpassed her. So relative to other champions, I've downgraded her to S tier because I believe she was God tier in my previous tier lists. Because she can just do everything. So Ahri is not bad, but I don't think she benefited as much as other champions did, which was a lot. I'm still not sure what the best Ahri build is either. Like, it's simple, but I'm not sure. Like, you're always doing core item, which is like Ludens or Malignance, and then damage item, which is either Storm Surge, Infinity Orb, or Lich Bane. I think Lich Bane is actually kind of underrated. And then you do like Death Cap, Void Staff, and then Stasis if you need or whatever. But yeah, I think that yeah, it's not, excuse me, I'm like kind of tired of I'm a little tired. I've been doing this for an hour already. But yeah, I think that Ahri does in general benefit a little less. I'm just already thinking about Akali, so I'm just gonna move on to her already. Akali I'm gonna put in the A tier. I think she's good, and if you're really good on Akali, you can make her work. I do think she's like slightly weaker. I already talked about this in the Baron lane. I think slightly weaker. If you can get her in a good matchup, her hair looks awful. And the haircut. If you can get a good matchup, you already heard me talk about her in Baron lane. She can be okay, but overall not great. Akshan, we're gonna put into. Akshan is such a weird champion, man. Like the problem is, no one actually knows how to play him other than like a few one tricks that are like insane on him. I'm gonna put him into A tier because that's actually where he deserves to go. But no one knows how to play this champion well. Like, even I don't really know how to play him well. But when I see one tricks play him, I'm always amazed at how good they are. Annie, S tier, she benefits a bit from the patch, right? Malignance is really good on her. You can just go like, you can go Malignance, you can go Proto Belt on her. You can play her like utility focused with just spamming your stun tibbers as often as possible. So either do like a Malignance Proto Belt or Proto Belt Malignance into Infinity Orb, Death Cap, or Void Staff. They have a lot of CC. I think she benefits a bit from the changes because Malignance is a better early game item too. Maybe like slight beneficiary, but she's already a really good champion. Aurelion Sol, he's also going to be going into the S tier. One of the best late game hyper carries. The problem with Aurelion Sol is that the game got a little quicker with the minion changes they made. However, Liandry's was also buffed, and Aurelion Sol always had a problem of, okay, I want Rallies, but what the fuck do I build now? Right? I don't want to get Death Cap because it's too early. Now you can get it because, again, it's a flat 30%. And it gives you 130 AP, so it kind of makes sense you can get earlier. So you never really know what to build. Sometimes you go Liandry, sometimes you'd go Riftmaker, but now you can just always go Rallies Liandry's. So that feels really nice on him. He just continues to be an absolute late game monster if you can get your free stacks. Next up, we have Brand, who is going to be in the A tier. I know. A lot of you guys are like, no, Brand is so OP. Brand is so broken. And he is a lot better than what he used to be, right? He used to be C tier, maybe sometimes B tier in my tier lists. So he's definitely benefited a lot from this patch. You can now just build Blackfire Torch, Liandry's, or I actually think Liandry's first is better, and then Blackfire Torch after. Or you can just get Blackfire Torch and go straight into like Rallies against a lot of team comps. And what I do think is really broken, I think he just made him go from probably the weakest or one of the weakest mid laners to one of the better ones. Not the best, definitely. He still struggles in a lot of matchups in the mid lane, and that's why I actually think he's better in the support role. He struggles a lot in a lot of matchups, especially against a lot of assassins. So unfortunately, even like super meta and people are playing him a lot. Like he's not meta, but he's high play rate. I don't think I can put him higher than A tier. I don't think he can make it into the exclusive S tier list. Fizz, straight to B tier. I love Fizz. This patch probably was like even bad for him, honestly. The problem with Fizz is his third ability cooldown is way too long. Can you believe that in League of Legends, it's 8 seconds at max rank, and in Wild Rift, it's 10 seconds. Wild Rift, that's meant to be a faster game. Fizz's E cooldown, his third ability cooldown is longer. How dumb is that, dude? Justice for my boy Fizz. But he's just such a frustrating champion to play against, so like, right, never buff him. Next up, we have Gragas, so I'm also gonna drop into. I'm not gonna include him in the mid lane tier list. No one plays him, but he'd be B tier or something. I haven't seen enough of him to really be able to tell. I can only like kind of theory craft, and I don't want to do that. Diana straight to B tier. Yeah, Diana is just unfortunately not great. Hasn't been for a while. Did I put Diana in my jungle tier list? I don't remember. Okay, if I did not put Diana in my jungle tier list and I forgot her, she should be in either A or B tier. I think A tier because wait, let me drink. Okay, so in the jungle, A tier, because in the jungle, Dusk and Dawn, fuck, I want to talk about Diana in the jungle and I forgot. Okay, if you commented, what about Diana, and now you made it to this part of the video, I'll talk about Diana jungle here. And the jungle is actually like improved a bit, and I think she's A tier in the jungle because Dusk and Dawn actually helps her jungle clear quite a bit. And this helps her early game a lot better. She becomes this early game skirmisher. However, in the mid lane, I think she's actually weaker. Because again, you don't care about your jungle clear, all your matchups are bad, you can only just go in. She just struggles in the mid lane a lot more, especially in lane versus most matchups. So B tier in mid lane, but A tier in the jungle. I think I don't remember talking about her, so I think I skipped her. Echo. Pains me to do this. He's like in between A tier and B tier. I think I'm gonna have to put him in B tier. Like, I like Echo, but Dusk and Dawn wasn't what I was hyped to be. Losing the attack speed on Flip War actually hurt more than anything, right? He lost 40% attack speed there. I think in the jungle, he's a little more viable because, again, the like Dusk and Dawn Nashor's build that you don't really do in mid lane. You kind of want to go burst. He has really high AP scaling, so he suffers from the death cap changes. So overall, not a good patch on Echo, despite it in theory being a good one. In practice, it just hasn't been the case, unfortunately. Ooh, Ezreal mid, AP Ezreal mid. How is AP Ezreal mid? I wonder if he's like, I think he's actually been nerfed from the patch. I don't know. I'll have to play some AP Ezreal mid, see if he's still good. I can't really tell, because like Lich Bane seems kind of OP now. All right. Galio is gonna go into S tier. And the main reason why Galio is S tier, even like he's more of a situational champion, is that the pick rate of like I'm saying every single game mages, right? Sometimes 2, even 3 mages a lot of the time. And Galio really shines against that. He did benefit, I think, quite a bit from his patch because his mid lane build was never clear. Galio never had a clear mid lane build because you didn't want to go tank on him. Tank felt pretty bad, but you also didn't want to go full AP on him because you were just so squishy. But like now he kinda has some items in the mid lane that make sense, right? Riftmaker makes quite a bit of sense now, right? You gain AP base, like I guess before you go like Psychic Projector sometimes. He's at such a weird build, but now you do have more of a clear mid lane build where you can still do a lot of damage and still be super tanky. I think his tanky build is probably a little better than his AP build, like his burst build. So items like Riftmaker, items like Hollow Radiance, items like what's that one that does damage around you every 4 seconds? Anyway, that item. You can go Bunch's Veil now against some champions. Magic's Boots, I think, are a lot better on him now too. Obviously, you get the upgrade to tier 3 Magic's Boots, so that's pretty cool. I just haven't talked about the boot changes too much. They just haven't been that relevant because most champions still go the same boots that they went before. And then I guess now they get the tier 3 versions, but that's about it. Jace, I'm gonna put into S tier. Jace is one of the most underrated champions in mid lane. He wins every single lane. He always has mid lane prio. He still scales very, very well. I think he's been an underrated champion in the mid lane for a long time. No one really plays him other than me, but if you guys watch my stream, I really pop off with Jace mid lane every time I pick him. He's like one of my highest win rate champions. So yeah. Next up, we have Kassadin, who will be our first God tier S+ tier champion. So Kassadin, I mean, I've always considered him to be one of the best champions, right? So no surprises there. He's always between S tier or S+ tier, my tier list. This patch, I don't necessarily think has been like a crazy buff for him. I think it's about even. I think the Rod of Ages build has gotten a little worse. However, his Seraph's Malignance build has gotten better. He has a slightly better early game, which helps, right? Your late game is probably a little worse, but you don't care because in the late game you're already a god. But your early game has gotten a little better, and that's what's really important. And also, you do have the ability to go for magic resist boots now. I think magic resist boots actually do very, very well. Because before, you didn't want to miss out on any AP, right? Because when you get your Death Cap power spike, it would be a lot better. But I think magic resist boosts are really nice because he really likes the tenacity, right? So when playing against like a champion like Annie or Ahri, they charm you, they stun you, but then you just have that tenacity, so you just run them down. They can't ever escape. They can't CC you. So you can go magic resist boots on him as well. I think actually Frozen Heart might be an angle on him too now, because again, you don't really care about, before you want to only get AP items to get the magic penetration, the 7% magic penetration that every item gave. You don't care about that anymore. You don't really care about maximizing your Death Cap AP. You scale off mana, your full combo immediately puts all the stacks in. So I think it's a decent item, Frozen Heart. You can build stasis in items still. You can actually get stasis earlier too. You can go tier Malignance or like Archangel's Malignance into Seeker's Arm Guard, so you get your stasis way sooner. So you can go ult in, use your combo stasis, ult out, right? So one of the biggest winners of the patch. It's not like a massive win, but he was already a strong champion. You guys know I fuck with Kassadin. Katarina, we're actually up into A tier. I think Katarina didn't necessarily benefit from the changes in the late game, but her early game became more deadly, so she can snowball a lot earlier. Overall, about the same, I would say, but a bit of an earlier power spike for her. She can actually go for the she doesn't have to go for magic resist boots. She can go for the healing boots. And she can also go for magic resist boots. She doesn't have to go for the boots of mana. She can go magic resist Merc Treads or for the glutinous. Now that it gives AP, right? So she has more choices in her build as well. So decent champion. Didn't really benefit or lose. Maybe like slightly benefited, if anything. Kayle, we're gonna put into A tier. Again, I could potentially put her into S tier in the mid lane, but I feel like that'd be too much. Her early game is still really, really shit, and she just completely gets bodied in the early game. But you can spam heal and survive pretty much every lane in the mid lane. I don't think there's any lane where it just feels unplayable. Maybe no, there's no lane that feels unplayable, so you can't even blind pick Kayle mid, and you're just chilling. And you're scaling, you have your Dusk and Dawn 1-item power spike into like Nashor's and Rageblade. You don't, like you can go Void Staff as well on Kayle nowadays, which is actually pretty cool. Before you get those own hit items and you be like, oh shit, now I have no magic pan. Do I go Terminus, right? Now you can go Void Staff if you want. You can go Blitherun King, which is again really good. You can rush it out as well. And go kind of the on-hit build. But yeah, I think A tier is fair. Kennen will unfortunately be downgraded to the B tier. Actually, he's probably A tier in the mid lane because his matchups are a lot easier. He has a lot of burst. He's probably going like Proto Belt Rush. Okay, Lux is going to go into A tier. I actually think Lux is a decent champion. There's a lot of wave clear. I think it's kind of an underrated champion. I think a lot of people are trying out new builds on her. Her wave clear is really good. Her early game is really good. Her burst is really good. I think her late game is a lot weaker, but I do think she's like maybe slightly underrated, honestly. I think Lux has a lot of potential in mid lane, but no one really plays her there, and she's mostly a support. Morgana, A tier. I think Morgana actually benefited quite a bit from the changes. She just hasn't been strong for a while after the second ability nerf, but I do think that with Liandry's, Rally's, Blackfire Torch, she just burns people, man. So I'm going to put her into the A tier. And she's obviously the best at like nullifying lanes, but I've talked extensively about that in the past, so I'm not going to continue yapping about it. Next up, we have... Is Orianna next? Orianna, she's also going to be going to S+, so you get buff on her ultimate, but she also benefits a lot from the items. She's one of the best champions just rushing tier. And then you can go Liandry's, you can go Blackfire, you can go whatever second item you want. But I think the ultimate buff, along with the build variety that she now has made her better. What I really like doing, and I actually post on my second channel a gameplay of it, which you guys probably saw on stream, was the Cosmic Drive. So you go tier into Cosmic Drive and you have just so much ability haste and so much movement. And you can just hard 1v9. And you do that with the Conqueror rune. You can go phase rush on her, but I think Conqueror is the way to go for max damage. Maybe I'm wrong about the Conqueror. It feels really nice though. Next up, I guess not Karma. Oh, I think I skipped Aurelia. Aurelia's gonna go into the S tier. It's really, really strong with Blade of the Rain King. She one-shots pretty much every mage. She does struggle a bit in the late game, but I think that her early game, being as OP as it is, kind of carries her. She just destroys everyone in lane, maybe except Jace. So I think really, really good champion right now. So yeah, same reasons as Baron lane. Her matchups mid lane are probably a little easier too. She just kind of ruins your team comp because you don't have like a mage. You have too many bruisers in the late game. So it kind of depends on what your team picks as well. Like if you have like an AP jungler, like a Lily or a Morgana jungle or a Nidalee jungle, then Aurelia is even better. We're looking for mid laners. Nasus, I think he's actually really good mid, but no one plays him mid. So I'm not going to include him. Not going to include Pyke, obviously. Who's next? Where are all the mid laners, man? Where have all the mid laners gone? Senna, no one really plays her mid, but I don't think she's a great mid either way, so I'm not going to include her. Teemo, the young Timothy, we're going to put into A tier. I think that the young Timothy is actually better this patch slightly. But the mid lane, he's still... Teemo just has such a... He has no good matchups anywhere, man. That's the main issue with Teemo. But I think the Liandry's rush on him is really, really good. I think he's been slightly buffed this patch. So we're going to put him into the A tier in mid lane. I already talked quite a bit about him in the Baron lane section of the video. Twisted Fate, we're going to put into the A tier as well. I think Twisted Fate actually benefited this patch quite a bit. So I think it might even be fine to put him into S tier. The nice thing about Twisted Fate is that, yes, he has the Dusk and Dawn Nashor's Tooth build, which I don't think is great, to be honest. I think he mostly benefited from having a better early game, which is where TF shines, and he can just snowball off control quite quickly. I'm not sure if Dusk and Dawn is the way to go. I think the Nashor's Tooth build is still okay. Just have like different build choices, right? I personally like Luden's Lich-Bane Magnetic Blaster and just playing more for like burst utility. Just throw stunning card, throw your Q, walk away. But he just have a lot of build choices, and his early game is a lot better. So he's still gonna be a good A tier champion. I think it was A tier before too, but definitely one of the stronger A tier champions now. Maybe I need to divide them into more tiers. Some champions in A tier are like better than other champions in A tier. Honestly, about Veigar, one of the biggest losers of the patch, right? The death cap nerfs just they were like targeted towards Veigar, right? One of the things that made him so OP in Wild Rift was death cap being a super OP item. So he's just completely bonkers nerfed. Next up, ooh, the young Yasuo. Yasuo, again, the nerfs, very similar to Baron Lane. Yasuo's been OP for a very long time, so I do not mind these nerfs. If you're good Yasuo, you can still make him work, but now you actually have to be really good on this champion to make him work. So, very nice. We hate Yasuo on this channel. However, his brother Yone... Where did Yone go? There we go. His brother Yone is going to be going into the S tier, again, for very similar reasons why he's S plus tier in the Baron lane. In the mid lane, he just has a little, like... He kind of ruins your team comp a little more. He has a little worse matchups. It's a little harder to play a melee champion like Yone in the mid lane. You can really get on top of these mages the same way that a champion like Irelia or Kassadin can, right? Your only real reliable engage your third ability, first ability, which your first ability, again, the enemies know when you have it up, so they can just back off during that time. So it's hard to find good engages with him. Your ultimate, obviously, is a big commitment. You don't want to use your ultimate. Champions like Irelia and Kassadin are a lot better at jumping in. Same thing with like Arena and other melee champions. So in the mid lane, where it's just a short lane, and you're not a burst champion, right? You're a consistent damage dealer. It's harder to play him in lane. But again, with a Blade of the Ruined King, again, you can't really get grasp procs either in the mid lane, but still, really good choice in the mid lane. Definitely hard buff this patch. Ziggs, you have a lot more choices with. But I do think he was probably slightly nerfed this patch. I tried him quite a bit. He feels a little weaker than before. I think the main issue is that before he was really good, just like a lot of damage. Now he's more about like consistent poke, I think. Still a good champion, just a little weaker than what he used to be. Zed also in the A tier. Zed, maybe even B tier in the mid lane, honestly, because every time I've played Zed, the enemies have just immediately rushed Seekers, and he feels so much worse to play now because of it. I still think that Zed is really strong because of his, what do you call it? His energy cost being really low, so he can keep spamming abilities. But he's definitely weaker than the previous patch after the nerfs and the indirect nerfs from enemies being able to buy Seekers first item. Like I play against like an Ahri, and she just comes back to the lane with Seekers first item, and my ult is just useless. So that kind of sucks. Especially because she's one of my main champions. Next up, I'm definitely skipping a few, but here's Zoe. We're going to put her in the... Zoe I could put into S tier. I think Zoe I could put into S tier. I think she's really, really good if you know how to play her. She kind of benefits from the patch, and she already got... Actually, I'm going to put her in S tier. She kind of benefits from the patch, and she already got the buffs on her first ability, so she deals a lot of damage. So definitely one of the stronger mid laners right now if you know how to play her. Again, she has a bit of a learning curve. She's not easy. But if you can hit your skill shots, she does an insane amount of damage. Okay, next up we have... I can't find anyone else, so we'll just do Aurora. I think Aurora has actually been slightly nerfed this patch. I don't think it's like the end of the world for her. I think if you're a good Aurora, you can still pull her off. But she's definitely a lot weaker than she's been in the past. She also received a nerf, either this patch or the previous patch, I can't remember. But she's an okay champion. Nothing super insane, but she's an okay champion, I think. She still has quite a bit of burst. Lysandra actually benefited this patch because you can rush Malignance on her now, right? Which feels kind of nice. Before you could too, but it wasn't as great. You don't have the Soul Stealer item anymore, but you also have Crypt Bloom, right? Which works very well with Lysandra's kit. You like target one person, you one-shot them. You can go Stasis now, and again for AP champion, Stasis is a lot better because you're not wasting 1,000 gold, you're getting stats. So a lot of good things have happened for Lysandra. Vex, I'm going to put into A tier. She actually suffered, I think. I think her burst damage has gone down, but again, she's a great situational pick against a lot of mid laners, right? Against the Aurelias of the world, the Akalis of the world, Fizz, Echo, yeah, so against all these assassins, she'll always be good, so she will at least be A tier unless they completely butcher her. Ryze actually probably our last god tier, S plus tier champion. He just benefits so much from the changes. He loves being able to rush tier. That is so nice. Getting tier first item feels so good. Rod of Ages was changed specifically to make him better. And while his late game is probably a little less insane, he's just so much more powerful in the early to mid game that you can really snowball and make plays and be super useful. Next up, Victor. I'm going to put into A tier, but potential for him to be S tier. I think he's overall the changes again. His late game was slightly nerfed, but his early game changes kind of compensate for that. Lich Bane I think is really good on him. Malignance I think can be good on him. I think the Fleet Footwork nerfs kind of sucked because I really liked building Fleet Footwork on him, and now it's like less good, but this is what it is. Vladimir is also going to go into A tier. I really thought that Vladimir will actually benefit from this patch, but again, his late game is just quite a bit weaker, and you really only played Vladimir for like that late game burst, like his teamfight late game burst. Yes, his early game is a little better. He can survive lane a little easier. I'm also not sure what the best build on him is. I've been theory crafting Vladimir builds, but I haven't found anything that like really works. Zyra A tier, obviously without the bug, she's still a decent champion, but nowhere near as strong as with the Nashor's Tooth bug. Still a decent champion though. Deals a lot of damage over time, benefits from the Liandry's and the Blackfire Torch changes, and now the bug was fixed and her plants actually work with Magic Pen, so Void Staff later on works with your plants. The change is less relevant than it seems because now every champion doesn't get 7% Magic Pen, right? As in the past. Heimerdinger, actually, a lot of people have been praising Heimerdinger. I actually think he's possibly a little weaker now because before he was like this burst champion with his ultimate E, ultimate third ability. Now you kind of have to play him more for his turrets. And again, even though now the Magic Pen gets applied, you don't get Void Staff until very early later on, so it's not like that big of a difference. So I know you definitely play with your turrets. Taliyah we're going to put into A tier. Again, she's probably better in the jungle too. The problem with Taliyah mid is that like her matchups are meh. You kind of push and roam, right? You have that playstyle of pushing and roaming. Definitely after all her nerfs, she's still a good champion, but nowhere near as good as she used to be. Mel actually think is one of the weaker champions right now. The new items are not great on Mel, and she's received just too many nerfs throughout the patches. I don't really know what the best build even is on Mel, and she's like with this champion that just like really one-shots, and she can't really do that anymore. She's like a long-range one-shot mage, and she can't really do that. Her consistent damage is kind of meh in fights. So I think B tier, like a lot of the burst champions in this patch were nerfed in general. Is that it for the mid lane? I'm missing Nora, who I'm really between B tier and A tier. I actually thought that the Nora changes were a nerf, and she's in a similar boat with Ziggs, where the new items I thought would be good on her. The changes were like a bit of a nerf, a bit of a buff in some way. I thought the change would be good on her, but they end up being bad on her. Same thing with the Ziggs and other artillery mages. So I'm going to put her in B tier because she's felt very underwhelming. Again, very similar reasoning with Ziggs. And I think that is it for the mid laners, right? Is that what I'm forgetting? Let's do a quick look-see through. I guess I'm forgetting Swain. There's Swain. Swain A tier. I thought that he'd be a lot better with the changes. They seemed like very Swain-focused changes. But he's been like kind of underwhelming. I'm not even sure what the best build on him is. I think before he was just really good with his burst build. So now I think like you do like a tankier build for sure. You go like Malignance, maybe Liandry's, maybe tankier, right? So I thought he would be good before you'd go like Malignance, Infinity Orb, and just burst. But I think now his better build is probably like tankier. So he does feel a little underwhelming. I thought that he'd be a lot better. Definitely forgetting. Okay, I'm forgetting Vel'Koz. Again, Vel'Koz, same issue with other artillery mages. The items I thought would be better on him, they end up like not really being. Wait, I'm actually forgetting a lot of champions. Not just Vel'Koz. Syndra. Skip over Syndra. So again, same issues with a lot of these other mages. Syndra A tier as well. I thought again, burst mages have all like pretty much burst mages and artillery mages have been nerfed. The champions that have been like that are better are the burst mages with also a lot of utility, like the Ahri and the Annie, right? They can go in with her ultimates. Orianna just got like the consistent damage champions have been buffed, right? Like the Rise, like the Orianna, especially those that love abusing Boots of Mana and or not Boots of Mana, tier, right? All the mana item. Who else am I missing? I think that might be it, right? Just a final check through. Talon is not really a mid laner. Not gonna include him. I think that might be it for mid lane. That looks good to me, right, chat? If there's someone I'm missing, please comment down below and I'll give you my thoughts in the comments. But I believe that is it for the mid lane. And yeah, let's move on to the ADC position. Okay, moving on to the ADC position, the drag dealing position. Here's actually where I think we've had the least amount of changes in my opinion. Obviously, we have one new item. We have the, what do we even call that? The Gale Force. Technically, we do have Mercurial Scimitar, which can be purchased on ADCs too, but that just kind of replaces Quicksilver and doesn't give any crit chance, so it's not optimal. But yeah, moving on to ADCs, not much has changed. Let's start with Ashe, who's gonna go straight into S tier. Ashe does very good with a lot of the on-hit items and the crit items. I think Kraken Slayer is actually really good on her as a first item to give you like an initial power spike. You can still go for like a typical crit build on her as well, so you have a lot of options. Ashe is pretty much always good as well because of her utility, right? So you can go the on-hit build, you can even go Blade of the Ruined King, which again we say is actually pretty good. Even though it gets slightly nerfed for range, it's still decent. And Rage Blade, so you can do like Kraken, Blade of the Ruined King, Rage Blade, and then like Runan or something. But the crit build is still fine. She has a lot of utility from her passive and her ulti, which makes her a good ADC pretty much all the time. Akshan is not really an ADC, so I'm not going to include him. He's like more of a mid laner, right? Caitlyn, I think Caitlyn is actually like relatively weak right now. The main issue with Caitlyn is that, yes, she's a bit of a lane bully, but her mid game is just so weak, and that's where like most Wild Rift games also get decided too. So having like that weak of a mid game definitely pushed her down. I've always had her between A and B tier. I think now she's gonna go into B tier in the current meta. Like early game is okay, you get like the Collector Magnetic Blaster combo all the time on Caitlyn, but then she just deals no damage to the tanks. She doesn't really have any attack speed steroids or damage steroids like most hyper carry ADCs. So while yes, she does have her long range, she just kind of falls off. And in the late game, she's only good because of her high range, right? So I'm going to keep her there. Next up, we have Corki, who is going to go in S tier as well. Corki has a lot of burst damage for an ADC. But again, I don't want to talk too much about ADCs because most of them are quite similar. Not much has changed for them. Draven, I really like Draven. I think he's an A tier champion. The problem with Draven is that he's very predictable with his axes. And even though he's a lane bully, he has a very strong laning phase. He does kind of struggle against a lot of support matchups, especially. So I think if you're a good Draven, you can definitely pull him off. He also got slightly nerfed with the Essence Reaver changes. But you don't always build Essence Reaver on him anyway. You mostly go like Bloodthirster, Infinity, just pure damage. So I'm going to put him in A. I think he's a decent champion, especially if you're gun him. Our first S+ tier / God tier champion is, of course, Ezreal, who got a slight buff with tier being... you can actually start tier on Ezreal. You don't have to start longsword. You can start tier, and that actually makes his like level, his first base surprisingly strong, because Ezreal would run out of mana quite quickly before he gets his tier, and now he doesn't really have to worry about that anymore, right? He can just buy a tier and stay in lane. You don't have to. You can buy longsword for more damage and better trading. I think longsword is probably better. But you have the option of going tier, especially in like kind of AFK lanes where not much will be going on. Like if you're either in a hard matchup, your support is like weaker than the enemy support, and you just want to chill and scale, you can just go tier and stack that up quickly. But Ezreal definitely continues to be one of the best ADCs. Next ADC we have Jhin, who's actually really, really good. Jhin continues to do an insane amount of damage in the late game. He also, again, similar to Ashe, has a lot of utility with his second ability Root, and of course his ultimate, being able to catch out enemies and assist your team from really high range, similar to Ashe Arrow. So he's always going to be good for his utility. He has a good wave clear with his first ability, and he actually does an absurd amount of damage in the late game once he completes all his items. Graves is not an ADC. Jinx I actually think is quite weak for the most part. While she's a decent hyper carry if you do have like a Lulu with you or a champion that can that can assist her in staying safe and dealing damage. So I do think she's okay with hyper carries, but for the most part she's just not really keeping up with the rest of the ADCs. Also, she's kind of countered by a lot of the more meta champions. She's countered by both mages and assassins, so it's kind of difficult for her to play. She's more of like a tank killer, and again, tanks are not that great anymore. I wouldn't call her a tank killer. She can DPS tanks quite quickly, but not necessarily a tank killer. So again, with like the proper team comp, she can work, but there's just better champions than Jinx right now. So I'm gonna put her in B tier. Next up, we have Kai'Sa, who technically did get, in theory, buffed, because now she does have the option of going Dusk and Dawn, I guess. I don't think that's necessarily good on Kai'Sa, even though it does apply her passive, right? I think Kai'Sa is probably better off going to just a regular on-hit build. The Bork changes don't really help her either way, because I guess it does have decent AD scaling, so it's kind of a buff more than a nerf, the Bork changes. So yeah, I do think you probably still go for on-hit build. The problem with Kai'Sa is, again, her range is really short. Her ultimate did get buffed, so now she has a little more utility for dives. I think another problem with Kai'Sa is people play her like just blind pick Kai'Sa all the time, while she's not really good blind pick. So she kind of falls into the trap that a lot of people love playing her. So they pick her into bad matchups, while there's so many champions that do super well into Kai'Sa, right? Especially like champions that outrange her. So she's constantly playing comps that she's not good at, while she's better off at like killing bruisers and tanks. She will struggle against these like squishier champions. So I think A tier is fair, but I can see an argument for B tier on Kai'Sa as well. Next up, I have Lucian, who's gonna go straight into S tier. She's really, really good in terms of bursts, right? Lucian has a lot of burst with Essence Reaver Magnetic, and now he has Gale Force as well as an early game option. Yes, Essence Reaver got nerfed, but I think Lucian will continue to be one of the stronger ADCs. He also is one of the ADCs that's not kind of reliant on attack speed boots, which I think overall, by the way, are weaker than most other boots. I think the champions that like kind of rely on attack speed boots, maybe slightly weaker. It's not a big change, but like Caitlyn and Jinx, again, attack speed boots user. Ashe is an attack speed boots user. That's actually pretty good. I think the ones that can go for the healing boots, like the Omnivamp boots, Immortal Treads, will be a little better, like the Jhin, Jhin can go for the Armor Breaker boots too, which are really, really powerful right now as well, especially on champions like Jhin, that you can go Bloodthirst and you still get healing, right? Next up, MF. She will also be in S tier. MF has been really OP for a while. Just her ult actually do an insane amount of damage, but her ulti can be game-changing as well. Just so much damage on this champion. And you can go, you don't have to, you're not locked into the, you're not locked into like a crit build, right? You can go more assassin mode with her, with items like Duskblade. You can pick up a Collector. She also utilizes Armor Breaker boots that are really good on these types of ADCs. So she's also gonna be in S tier. But again, you're not gonna see many changes from my previous tier list when it comes to ADCs. Samira, we're gonna put in A tier. Samira is always good if you can pair her up with like an aggressive go-in team. So she continues to be great for that. But again, she can be easily countered by a lot of crowd control, right? She kind of destroys squishies, but suffers a lot if you can just lock her up, pin her down, and one-shot her. But she's decent right now. And again, a lot of the supports or the meta ADCs will shift based on what supports are good as well. And the nice thing about support is that there's always good enchanters and good go-in champs can engage. Tristana is also going to go into B tier. Unfortunately, Tristana just kind of struggles too much in the early to mid game to really be a competitively good ADC. Again, similar problems with the Jinx in terms of, yeah, she can be a hyper carry late game, but until you get there, it kind of sucks. And I think a big part of this is also that crit items are just not that great at hyper carrying right now. So all of these hyper carry ADCs like Tristana, Jinx, Caitlyn don't do as well as the on-hit champions or the champions that don't rely on hyper carrying, like the Lucian, like the Jhin, the Ashe, and the MF that provide more than just damage, right? Or MF provides damage through her ultimate. Lucian provides more burst. Ashe and Jhin more utility. Again, Corki more burst, right? While these like just auto attack ADCs are just not great right now. This auto attack crit ADCs, excuse me, because the on-hit ADCs are pretty good. Who is next? Am I leaving someone? Senna, we're not going to count as an ADC, but you will be on the support list. Don't you worry. I actually think Senna is best played as as an ADC. Like you usually want to, like Senna Nautilus is really broken, but no one plays it, which sucks. Because you don't want to go double marksman in bot lane. And people, like Senna is such an underrated champion because she's not played the way that's supposed to be played. She's like inherently nerfed by people picking Senna, like Senna Corki lane or Senna Samira lane. If you played like Senna Nautilus, she would be so unbelievably OP. Give me Senna Nautilus, Senna Thresh, and like have the Thresh, like you can still go support item, right? Anyway, you have the Thresh be the one farming. Varus, we're also gonna put into A tier. The ult buff was nice, but I don't think it necessarily makes him turbo OP as compared to other ADCs. He's still like one of the best on-hit champions in the game. However, I don't think I can rationalize putting him higher than A tier. And then Vayne is also going to be joining him. One of the best tank killers in the game, one of the best kiters in the game. However, her early game is just, it's too big of a problem right now. And it's hard for her to really get leads or even stay even in lane. If you can pick her into a good matchup and a good team comp, of course, she becomes deadly. She becomes one of the best champions in the game. Xayah is the only crit ADC that I actually think is really good. I'm going to put her in A tier though. I don't think she's as good as the S tier champions. But compared to like Caitlyn, Jinx, Tristana, she's a better crit ADC mostly because her early to mid game is actually quite good. So she doesn't... she's like good in all stages of the game. While Caitlyn is good in the early to mid game and falls off late. While Tristana and Jinx are weak in the early game and kind of become useful later. Xayah is good in all times of the game, but not as good as the S tier ADCs in my opinion. Twitch will continue being B tier. Again, same issue. He's like, you technically can go on hit on Twitch, and I wonder how good the Blade of the Ruined King build will be on him. But he's more of a crit teamfight ADC, right? And he just suffers from the same fate as Jinx pretty much, right? His early game is too weak, and his late game just doesn't compensate unless you're able to somehow get leads, which is not that easy when your early game is ass. Kog'Maw we're gonna put in S tier. I actually think Kog'Maw is still good after his nerfs. He benefits a lot from all the on-hit items being super OP, and he just shreds tanks with his high range and damage. Being able again to deal magic damage from his second ability, high range. So I think Kog'Maw continues to be just the best hyper carry champion in the game, right? Yeah, for Twitch, it's definitely Blade of the Ruined King now that I think about it more. Because it got buffed on the AD ratio, which Twitch really likes. He probably goes like Blade into crit. But yeah, again, with Kog'Maw, you're going to go full on head with Rage Blade, right? And he continues to be really good with that despite the nerfs. Smolder is, again, God tier. The 2 mana immune users, it just goes to show how broken tier is as well. The 2 mana immune users continue to be the best ADCs in the game. Yeah, Smolder is just unbelievably OP since he's released. They've nerfed him so many times and he just continues to still be the best ADC. Yes, you do need to get your stacks, but once you get them, even if you're behind, you're dealing an insane amount of damage. You provide his first ability is just so annoying to deal with because he hits the front line and the back line, and he just provides way too much damage while being way too safe. What a broken champion. What a broken champion. You can't go crit on him. I do still think that the Trinity Force build is the way to go, especially after the Essence Reaver nerfs. You're probably just going for Menemune, Trinity Force, and then it kind of becomes situational. Usually Cyril does third, and you can get Spear of Sojin or... what's the other item? You can go Spear of Sojin or Magnetic Blaster to increase your first abilities range against high range champions, Guardian Angel at that point. So yeah, Smolder continues to dominate. Nyla is not an ADC, so we're not going to include her. Let's pick up Sivir, and we're also going to put her into the A tier. Sivir, again, will always be good because of her utility on her ultimate and her high wave clear. So again, crit ADC is not great right now. However, Sivir will continue to be good because of that utility and wave clear. She can give your team really high tempo, so she's more of a supportive ADC than a hyper carry, but she will still do a lot of damage in team fights when given the chance. Kalista, I'm really not sure about. Like, I've seen some crazy good Kalistas, and it makes me want to put her in A tier, but I do think she should be in the B tier. But I've seen some crazy good Kalistas. The problem with Kalista as well is that, see, once you go attack speed boots, but the movement speed doesn't really benefit her because of the dashes, right? No. I'm gonna put her A tier. I think the Blade of the Ruined King buffs really help her as well, even though she does less health on hit, she gets more AD. I think she's just a really hard ADC to play, but if you're good in ADC, yes, the attack speed boots are weaker than the Immortal Treads, but they still help Kalista quite a bit than before. I'm gonna put her A tier, but it's an iffy A tier, I think. I think if you're like a god on Kalistas, it's like pretty good, but if you're not, then you should probably stay away. Okay, and let's talk about the newest champion that obviously you guys are curious where I would rate her, and I'm putting her into A tier. I know that a lot of people swear that Yunara is OP. I think she can be, and I think she's good in the late game, and she does have a lot of build diversity. I've seen a lot of different builds that make her look decent. I do think that the Bloodthirster Magnetic Blaster build is probably the way to go, but I've seen some on-hit with Kraken, some AP builds even. But I think it's probably Bloodthirster Magnetic Blaster angle on her. And I think she can be pretty good with a lot of supports. And from Hyper Carry crit ADCs, she's probably the best one. She's probably a little better than Xayah, but she's nowhere near the S tier champions in my opinion. I think they're just better and more reliable. I would definitely still rather have Kog'Maw as a hyper carry than Yunara, but I do think she's good. I kind of maybe underestimated her a bit at least. I thought initially she was on the weaker side. Now I think she's around middle of the pack when it comes to ADCs. The most balanced release we've had in a long time, by the way, Yunara. Like, we haven't had a balanced release in a long time. The champs are either way too weak like Skarner or like way too strong like Nidalee or Taliyah. And let me do a final check, make sure that I'm not missing any ADCs. Are we missing any ADCs? None of your ADCs. I guess Senna is not going to be counting here. Oh, Zeri. We almost forgot Zeri, man. Zeri will also be joining A tier. Zeri just doesn't really have any strengths, if that makes sense. Like, she's okay. Her build got slightly nerfed because Essence Reaver is weaker now. This is again just meh. She doesn't. I really don't like the. I don't really like the Zeri rework that they did, to be honest. But yeah, I don't really know what the best build for Zeri is either. She's meh, middle of the pack. Her early game is just pretty weak. She scales all right, but not the best. Like, obviously better than most ADCs, but not the best. And it feels like she doesn't really take over games anymore the way she used to. But she's okay. I'd put her like A to mid A. Like, she's compared to the other A tier champions, she's okay. So I think she's definitely just gonna be chilling in A tier. Do we have every ADC? I think so, right? That should be all of them. Yeah, it should be all of them. Alright, let's move on to supports then. Okay, moving on to supports, and here's where we've had quite a few item changes. However, they haven't really shifted the meta too much. The champions that are OP continue to be really OP on support, and there's a lot of really good supports. And champions that continue to be weak are kind of weak, but support really doesn't have that many weak champions. Like overall, a lot of supports feel really good. I starting off with Alistar, we're gonna put him in A tier. He's alright, he has good engages, and if you know how to find the right timings with Alistar, he can be good, and of course he's a great tank in the late game with his ultimate, right? No matter what, he will always be useful because he has really good knockups, and he has an incredible ultimate to make him always tanky. So you'll always find value in Alistar even if you're behind. However, he just doesn't have the same tools as some other supports to this patch. Next up, we have Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank can situationally in a lot of matchups be good. However, I don't think I can warrant putting him higher than A tier, especially he received some pretty big nerfs, like I guess it's been almost a year at this point since his nerfs that have made him quite a bit weaker. However, he's still a decent champion that can provide a lot of value if you are able to hit your grab, especially on priority targets. So again, Blitzcrank is never going to be a champion that's going to be too low because of that grabbing so OP. However, I don't think I can place him higher than that. Ashe, we're not going to consider support. Brand is actually going to be in S tier. I think he's actually really, really good support. I think he's better at support than mid lane, especially with the Liandry's Rallies build. It just provides so much value in team fights, and he doesn't really need a lot of gold, right? After those 2 items, it doesn't really matter what he builds, because he's already dealing a crazy amount of base damage with his passive that's enhanced by the Liandry's. And of course, the Liandry's takes for a longer time because of his passive too, and the Rally slow on the whole enemy team is so broken. I'm glad they've added that to Brand finally, and Ashe can be one of the best supports going forward. So I think he's really, really powerful at support right now. I did even think about putting him into S+ tier. However, I think the S+ champions are just slightly better, especially if you know how to utilize them at their best. Next up, we have Braum, who I actually think has slowly gotten worse. I think as many like ranged supports have gotten better and engaged supports have kind of like slightly fallen off, that he's struggling a bit, right? Too many bad matchups. Like, how do you play Braum against the champions like Senna, champions like Sona that's really OP right now? It's just his matchups are not great. However, he's still very, very good if you can get him into like a Leona or like a Nautilus or something like that. He'll always be a great counter to those types of champions. Next up, we have Galio, who is gonna be in S tier. I think as like a defensive support, he's better than Braum right now. Because of his ultimate magic damage shield, because he can actually engage as well with his third ability. His AoE taunt is still one of the best CCs in the game. So I'm gonna put him in S tier as a probably better like all-around peeler defender support than Braum too. Next up, I have Janna, who's going to A tier. Good defensive support. I think the Enchanter items overall probably made her a little weaker, because I think the Enchanter changes were slight nerfs for most Enchanters, especially the ones that kind of relied on them. Yeah, you do have Mikael's and Redemption, especially Mikael's. If you're really good, you can make good use of. So if you're a really skilled Janna player, she can still be really good, but I don't think we can put her higher than A tier. Next up, Leona. I'm actually putting to S tier. I think Leona is still really, really good. I think she didn't benefit from this patch. I think she became a little weaker, especially with the Thornmail nerfs. But if you're good in Leona, she's one of the best engaged champions in the game. She just has so much constant CC. She's really, really tanky with her second ability. And again, with Quicksilver being less accessible for a lot of champions, that does indirectly help her a lot too, because she was one of the easiest champions to deal with when you got Quicksilver. Obviously, now enemies can get Lofty Nasty through Merctrids, but Quicksilver not being as accessible makes Leona stronger. Next up, I have Karma, which we're gonna put in A tier. Karma is alright. I think there's just there's better mages than her, and there's better enchanters than her. So she's kind of like lost in the meta in a sense. Like, what would you go AP Karma when you can play a champion like Brand or even Nami? And what would you go support Karma when you can play a champion like Milio, right? And in general, enchanter supports I think got slightly nerfed too. I think most supports right now are actually the ones that are not like hard engage or hard defend or hard enchanter or like hard mages. The best supports are like champions are kind of like in between those classes, the more unique ones. I guess Sona is obviously a really OP enchanter, but we'll get there. And next up we have Lulu, which we're also gonna add The problem with Lulu is that her ultimate and her second ability are such powerful abilities that it feels really bad to not put her in S tier. So I'm gonna put her in S tier just because of that. I think she's just too good of a... Her utility is just too good. So despite items not being great on her, despite her not having great numbers right now, I think just because of the utility she can provide, and it's not just on her ADCs, right? Like, ulting a bruiser is like super OP as well for Lulu. So I'm gonna keep Lulu into S tier. Even though she's not like in a great spot right now, but her utility is just way too high. Like, it feels bad not putting her into S tier. It feels wrong. Lux, we're gonna put into A tier. Lux is alright, right? She continues to be a good mage support. I would still rather have Brand in my team, but Lux provides good utility with her first ability, her ultimate, her third ability. She's a little more gold dependent as well, so you don't want to fall behind on her. As with Branding matters less because your base damages are so high, but with Lux you don't want to fall behind, so you can keep your damage high. So she's definitely going to be weaker than Brand, but she's not a bad choice for a mage support. Nami, we're going to put in S tier. Nami continues to be just really, really strong. I think her heal is just too high and on too low of a cooldown. Like, Nami feels like Soraka a lot of the time, which is crazy. Especially with a combination of Harmonic Echo and Staff of Flowing Water. She utilizes those items super, super well. So I think she'll just continue to be S tier until further notice. Morgana is good as a counter pick, right? If you're playing against Blitzcrank, a Thresh, an Alistar, even a Braum, right? Morgana will continue to be good. I hate seeing her in my games because, especially against like Brand or Nami or any of those type of range supports, she becomes really, really weak. However, as a counter pick, she continues to be decent. Nautilus, so I've downgraded Nautilus from God tier to S tier after his nerfs, mostly second ability. He's not as tanky, and he's also kind of countered by so many of the meta champions right now. Pretty much every meta champion, other than like Sona and maybe Senna, is like a Nautilus counter, right? Nautilus does not even want to play against Brand, because Brand just one-shots him. He doesn't want to play against Galio either. He doesn't want to play against Thresh, because Thresh just like... lanterns your ADC away and peels them off Nautilus. He definitely doesn't want to play against Zilean. So it's kind of like the meta slightly pushed him down in combination with his direct nerfs. So I think he's finally fallen off from being the best support in the game. But he's still good, obviously still one of the best engaged champions. Pyke, I think Pyke is actually pretty good right now. Because again, the meta is somewhat squishy champions. Champions like Brand, Sona, right, champions that Pyke can abuse, as opposed to Nautilus. Pyke just has really high damage in the early to mid game, right? So I think he's in a better spot in theory, but Nautilus obviously has his benefits too of being tanky, of being easier to execute. But I think in terms of like hook aggressive supports, Pyke's probably a little better than in the past, while Nautilus is a little worse. So now they're both comfortably S tier, both are good. But obviously, like, for different reasonings. I don't know if I explained it very well, but just because Nautilus as a hook champion is weaker doesn't mean Pyke will be. Speaking of hook champions, Thresh is S plus tier. The buffs were just way too big, honestly. This champion just needs to be nerfed. His base damages are too high. I can't believe they just buffed all his abilities, by the way. How crazy was that? I'm glad to see Thresh on the top, but he definitely does deserve some nerfs. That was really insane. But he has been weak for a while, so I guess I'm happy that he got something. Sona is going to be our other S plus tier champion. I don't know what they were thinking with that second ability buff, by the way. He just gave her a 20 base heal for nothing on a spell that she just turbo spams. And now she has like a gazillion movement speed with her third ability, which is really annoying as well. Sona is actually by far the best support. Like, I think Thresh and Senna are like close seconds, but Sona is by far the best support right now. Like, it's not like, it's so disgusting how broken this champion is, while also taking 0 skill. She can also rush tier, so she never has to worry about mana. It's just a disgusting champion. Such a disgusting, easy to play free. If you want like free healer right now, just play Sona. I'm not joking. play Sona, rush tier, rush harmonic and stuff, the flowing water, and you're just like godlike. It's that simple. It's such a gross champion. It's actually a free win champion right now, with zero skill involved. Unless your team wins you, because again, you are a support, so you're kind of like at the mercy of your team. Rakan I'm gonna put into S tier. Rakan has the benefit of being both enchanter and engage champion, both a defender and engage champion. So depending on what your team comp needs, Rakan can deliver. So I think he's overall pretty good. Probably go like a tankier build usually, not really enchanter items, but he does provide like shielding and healing, right? Senna is gonna be our other S+ tier champion. She's been so OP for so long, and again, I think she's underutilized. I think she might even be better than Sona if you pair her up with like a bruiser engaged champion, have them farm. Champions like Galio, Senna Nasus, Senna Garen even. Super OP, but no one plays it for some reason. I guess you kind of need a duo to pull that off. Seraphine, so here's my issue with Seraphine, right? I don't ever see a situation where I want to play Seraphine instead of Sona. Does that make sense? I don't think Seraphine is necessarily weak, but why would I ever pick Seraphine over Sona? So that kind of makes me want to put her in the B tier, but if let's say that Sona is permabanned, then Seraphine would be an A tier champion. So I'll just put her in A tier. Because right now, especially Seraphine is mostly played in a similar playstyle of Sona. She's not played as a burst mage, she's played as a second ability spam utility champion, right? I've actually thought a lot about Soraka, and I think currently she should be in S tier. I think in the current meta, her silence is providing a lot of value, and I think she has slightly easier matchups than in the past. I would avoid picking Soraka into champions like Blitzcrank, Leona, and so on. However, she's a decent counter to Sona. I would still rather have Sona than Soraka in my team, but she's a decent counter to Sona. She can match her healing. And her silence obviously has a lot of value. I just avoid playing her into like Nautilus, Thrash, those type of champions. I pick her into like enchanters or mages, poke mages, stuff like that. Really good into bruisers too. Yuumi, what's fine about Yuumi is actually she's just straight up shit. She's been so bad for so long. Like, again, Yuumi, and I say this a lot, but for those of you that don't know, my head is blocking the C tier. Anyway, C tier. The problem with Yuumi is that if you have a really good player in your team, like Yuumi benefits from the matchmaking more than anything, because the way that the matchmaking works is you're not really matched with players of similar skill level in Wild Rift, so there's big gaps in the player's skill level, right? You might have a teammate that's really shit, and you might have a teammate that's really good. And putting Yuumi on that really good teammate is like a massive buff for your team, right? If everybody was same skill level, then Yuumi would never win games. But because you can put Yuumi on your really good player because of the matchmaking being bad, then that like player just turbo carries. If you guys were watching my stream, I was playing a Kassadin game where I just had a Yuumi sit on me and I was like a god, right? Veigar, I'm gonna put in B tier as support. Again, turbo nerfed from the items. Really unfortunate deathcap nerf for him, especially for support because deathcap is so expensive now too. Oof. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's the same gold. It is the same gold, right? Yeah, so maybe I just misspoke there. For some reason I thought it got more expensive. I guess the item, like the build changed. Anyway, same reasoning for mid lane. His damage just fell off really hard. Milio continues to be S tier, one of the best enchanter supports in the game. Just an incredible amount of utility and damage provided through his burn. Plus the extra range is just so good for so many different ADCs and so many different champions. However, he's nowhere near as good as Sona, so he's gonna stay there. Zilean is gonna be our last S+ tier champion. I think Zilean is still, despite all the nerfs he's received, he just has so much utility. His ultimate is such a dumb, broken spell on a way too low of a cooldown. He's also one of the best Mikhail's users, right? Because the thing with Zilean is, he provides all of utility, but it's not clear what the utility is, right? His second ability, yeah, has a shield, but it has like a crazy mechanic where it lowers cooldowns, right? Then his third ability is crazy utility, but doesn't really benefit from items. So Zilean loves unique items that he can abuse, like Mikhail's, because now he has like an additional utility source in case you are able to crowd control his teammates. So I think he benefits a lot from Mikhail's. as compared to other supports that, like, for example, like Nami or like Sona, they don't want to go Mikhails because they want to go Ardent or they want to go Staff of the Flowing Water, right? Zilean doesn't give a shit about Ardent or Staff of the Flowing Water. So he benefits from Mikhails more in that sense. What supports am I missing? Rel is an interesting case. I think he's A tier, definitely, or S tier, definitely if you can get her into a good matchup, right? Where you can just break the enemy shields, you can find good engages. So I definitely think she's S tier in that sense, but she does struggle in a lot of matchups. So she's a very matchup dependent champion. I'm definitely missing a lot more champions. Yeah, Bard is gonna also be in the S tier. If you're really good on Bard, you can have such a huge impact. He does a lot of damage if you build him AP, which I think is probably his best build right now. But you can also go for utility if you would like. Who else am I missing? Heimerdinger is definitely not support. I didn't really go too well in order. I wasn't really going in order. I was just picking them as I saw them. So I've definitely left a couple of champions. Vel'Koz support. Yep, we're gonna put him into A tier. Nazgul's brand, very similar to, I'd put her closer to Lux in terms of skill level. Because how oppressive Vel'Koz can be with his insane range, he can really take over games against the right team comps, and it's really hard for a lot of champions to play against them. So against the right team comps, Vel'Koz can definitely shine as support as well. He does have really high base damages, so he doesn't really care too much about the death cap nerfs. Did I put Vel'Koz in my mid lane tier list? I hope I did. But if I didn't, Vel'Koz A tier. I genuinely don't remember. So he would be A tier in the mid lane as well, just like support. Zyra. Zyra is also A tier. I wish she was better, but I would rather have Brand than Zyra on the support role. She's still decent. She can provide a lot of damage, a lot of utility. With her ulti knock up. Like, she has way more CC than Brand, but without items, Brand's damage is way higher than Zyra. And again, with support, you have like less items than most champions. Ornn is an S tier support. Not a lot of people play him, especially in the West. In China, especially in Legendary Queue, he's very popular in high elo. But they don't really play him too much in EU and NA. But I think he's very, very good. As a support, he has so much CC, he has so much tempo advantage with his passive. Great engages with his ultimate, right? And he just gets super tanky with his passive. So definitely an underrated champion. Does a lot of damage as well. Am I forgetting any supports? I think that, I guess Maokai, right? Maokai, there he is. Yeah, Maokai also S tier. He just, even though his main item, which was like the Yordle Trap, got nerfed, he's still a really, really good engager. His second ability is just so powerful because it's point and click and undodgeable pretty much, right? You just lock onto someone. So if the enemy team has any problematic champions, you can just lock onto them, get that point and click root, knock them up, guaranteed. His ultimate's again a really good teamfight spell, really good engage spell, really good even disengage spell. So another champion I guess I should include is probably Shen support. I think Shen support is really good. No one plays it, again. So I'm not sure if it should be included, but he's a really good support in my opinion. His stun is really good, his ultimate is really good, he has a lot of utility, and he has a lot of base damage too, so he can really do a lot in those early 2v2s, by the way. I guess we'll play Swain support, but I don't think it's good. So I don't want to include it. I don't know why people play Swain support. And Poppy, some people play Poppy and Set support too. Like, the problem is I don't want to put in champions that are not great and have low pick rates anyway. So I'm not going to include them, but they would be like B tier, maybe A tier. I think Set support as a situational counter can be good, especially in the early game. But it just doesn't provide as much as other engaged supports in mid to late game. So I think that will be it for the supports, and that will be it for my tier list. Obviously, there's probably going to be a patch that will fix a lot of the OP things in the next few days. Probably tomorrow or the day after, and I will adapt my tier list on that, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there on this patch. Because I know how much you guys care about finding out more information about the current meta and how well your... The crazy thing is, it's not like you guys are going to adapt in the meta. You're still going to play the same champions, but you're just going to be mad if your champion is like not great anymore. Are you gonna be happy if your champion silently good? Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. I put a lot of effort into researching and trying to figure out the meta over the last week. I watched a lot of Wild Rift content. I played the game quite a bit myself, and I think my tier list is fairly accurate. I always try my best to give you guys the best up-to-date information on my tier lists. So please leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more Wild Rift content.